So what I wanted to do today for our first work session is to go through the wish list. I don't want to, other than obviously how much each item costs, I don't want to focus right today on the revenue source. Finance is working with me on my draft substitute, and they're looking at revenue sources. And hopefully that draft is will be available on Monday, and we can then dig more into where the money's going to come from to pay for some of this stuff. But right now, I want to talk about each item, the rationale for each item, and have an open discussion on, whether or not these are items that we want to support. So Councilwoman Sara called me and said, do not talk about anything about the Minority Caucus until she gets here. So I am going to skip down to codes, and Councilwoman Johnston, if you can talk about, you're the first item, the 10 additional FTEs, if you can talk about those, and let me turn on your mic when I find it.
Perfect. Thank you. So when I realized that the original ask for codes for their 10 FTEs that's in the mayor's budget was actually already approved a year ago, but they were stopped with the hiring freeze, it was a little bit frustrating that they were having to fight yet again for the same 10 people that they already had, knowing that even then they were still understaffed. The really cool thing about codes is that essentially they're an enterprise fund. And so a lot of their employees they generate revenue by, issuing permits quicker, this, that, and the other. It's also an incredibly important department because it is safety, it is quality of life as it relates to property standards, which I know a lot of us have dealings with. So in addition to the mayor's budget, I asked them what would be helpful. And I probably should have, I think I put this in my ask that I sent to finance, but I don't know that anyone else has it. So it's a property standards inspections chief, which would actually create an STR division. Right now, we don't have an STR division. And so when we talk about enforcement, it's kind of hard. It's hard to do that because they are understaffed. So that would create that position. 3 property standards inspectors. Those do not create revenue, but obviously we need help dealing with the property standards and violations that we have. So that's more of the quality of life stuff. A plumbing inspector, 3 zoning examiners, a plans examiner, and an office support rep senior. So that outset is less than $800,000. But when you add in what the additional revenue that those FTEs generate, it generates almost $1.4 million. So it's an excess projected anyway, an excess deposited into the general fund at the end of the year of almost $575,000. So it's revenue positive. So we're increasing safety, we're increasing or decreasing the time that we can respond to those property standards violations, on down the line, and we actually make money from it. So I'm hoping everyone agrees. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but.
Any questions or additional comments? I know Councilman Taylor, you also had additional FTEs, but you had a different number, 6. Did you want to speak to your proposal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, if we could get 10, I would be extremely happy. 6 was a pretty even number. In a conversation with Mr. Bill Penn specifically, he needs more help responding to property standards violations calls. District 21 happens to have one of the highest property standards violation reports in Hub. And so one thing that I do know is that it takes them some time to get to those property standards violations to report back. And so if we can help him with extra staff and manpower, that would be extremely helpful. And then also, as you know, we're building a lot in the city of Nashville. District 21 had 59% property value increase. And with the codes inspections, one of the questions I get very often is, when is this building going to be done? And so I do know that people are waiting on codes inspections for quite some time now, that they're on the list, but they're well down the line. And so being able to have that inspection completed and those permit fees paid would be extremely helpful for the city.
And I see both you and Councilwoman Johnston, you mirror in that you're both asking for 3 property standards inspectors and 3 zoning inspectors. And then Councilwoman Johnston has the additional positions of property standards inspection chief, plumbing inspector, planning inspector. Am I saying that correctly? Plans examiner, sorry. Does anyone have any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the proposed? Councilwoman Vercher?
Thank you, Chair. Does that include fringe?
Yes, I'm getting a yes from Councilwoman Johnston, and as well as Councilman Taylor. All right, if there are no other comments, questions, or concerns, Councilwoman Johnston, we'll just stick with you and your proposals. You have one under general government. Yes, I'm sorry.
So as looking through, I see that Councilmember Stiles is asked to take from, to add codes to property inspectors as well. And one of those numbers are taking $50,000 from Ted Rhodes Golf Club. Ted Rhodes is probably one of the most underfunded golf centers here in Metro, and $50,000 would definitely hurt. When we have events at Ted Rhodes, we're eating in the cart barn with our event attendees, and so there's some other golf courses that don't have that problem. So I just wanted to go on record by saying that this is not a great idea to take $50,000 from one of the most underfunded golf centers with the highest increase of participation in golfers in the city of Nashville over the last 2 years.
That is duly noted, Councilman. Any other, hold on, Councilwoman Johnston. Councilwoman Benedict.
Thank you, Chair. I would just concur with what my colleague just said in regards to the golf course, as well as the concern about taking from Metro Arts.
Duly noted. Councilwoman Vercher.
Thank you, Chair. Since we're duly noting revenue sources, I want to be duly noted that I will not be supporting anything taken away from Metro Arts, anything from our parks, our golf courses that serves predominantly minority communities, i.e. Ted Rhodes Golf, and also taking away anything from our public service as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Duly noted. Duly noted, Councilwoman Benedict. Councilwoman Johnston.
Thanks. And again, you know, these codes, additional FTEs are revenue positive over $500,000. So it's an initial allocation, but it comes back to us in you know, it's revenue positive. So, are you wanting to move on to?
Actually, I'll give the folks that just walked in a couple of minutes. So let's just go to your under general government, the step increase.
Yeah. So the Civil Service Commission has recommended, and I think everyone got an email about that, recommended to reinstate the step increment schedules that were frozen from FY21 and also include a 3% for open range merit increases. That fiscal note's about $6 million. I think that the better way to handle this, and we can put it into the budget, but I think that after talking with Finance Director, we have our sales tax revenues that are coming in higher than what we have projected. And so I think the smarter way to deal with this, because I do want to make our employees whole, you know, to the point that they obviously kept us going throughout this horrid year that we have endured. These were promised pay plans that they were expecting when they took the job. They certainly deserve it. So I'd like to make them whole as much as we can. But I think that looking at it mid-year, after we get some more those revenue receipts versus the projections, to see that, yes, we do have that money, to look at that mid-year and make that determination. So if there was something that we could put into the budget articulating that we do have that intent, I think that would probably appease our employees. It would appease me, because I do feel pretty confident that we're going to have that money to do that mid-year.
Any comments, questions, concerns regarding the proposal for the adding back the step increase and the 1% to the open range folks, Metro employees? Councilwoman Porterfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the remarks from my colleague here. I strongly support adding that back. I believe it's 6.2 million. Strongly support adding that back. I would be very hesitant to wait mid-year. As we know, this is Nashville, and something always comes up here. So we don't know what may happen that would have a negative impact on our finances. And, you know, year after year, we've balanced the budget on the backs of our employees, and we can't keep doing that. Like, we can't keep making promises to our employees and not keeping those promises. Like, many of these employees are our neighbors. They are our constituents. They've worked so hard to keep this city going, and we have to keep our promises to them. So I would strongly recommend that we honor those promises and that we don't wait until we see. You know, like, we can't keep having like a wait and see type attitude. Like, we have to make that one of our priorities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other comments on that proposal? I tend to agree with Councilwoman Porterfield. I also had that conversation with Director Crumbo about waiting mid-year. And obviously, you know, I'm open to discussion, and we get to choose as a council, but it sounds like telling employees to wait again, and we've done that a lot. So I'm hesitant about that, about telling them to wait again. Councilwoman Johnston.
Thank you, and I totally get that, and I'm happy to address it now. I mean, that was my original intent. It is a little bit of a large fiscal note to it. And so my concern is, where's that money going to come from? Because I don't want to cut from another department. I think we've done that plenty. We need to start reinvesting more money into our departments because. And so I think, you know, I know you didn't want to talk about the revenue source, but we sort of have to. So a lot of what was in this wish list was pulling from 5% down to the 4% fund, which is roughly $10 million. So if that's what we're looking to work with, understanding that however we want to work it out, honestly, I want to make our employees whole, but I do think but we do have some other, I think, priorities as well as far as investing. So again, I'm happy to do however you want, but I don't want to cut any other department in order to do this.
So for the folks who just got here, we're going through the wish list and talking about each item. And obviously, in talking about each item, we have to talk about how much it costs. I didn't want to get too bogged down into the revenue sources, because I have turned in a draft to finance that, you know, just in all honesty, includes a lot of this stuff. And so they are working on finding the revenue sources. And so once that draft is in place, I think we can have a better discussion about the revenue source. And hopefully we can do that on Monday. Councilwoman Suara?
Thank you, Chair. And I think you probably said something I was going to talk about. But the other thing that I wanted to suggest, if we're not able to work everything in, is maybe we can do something similar to what we did last year with the step increases for the teachers, whereas it's in the budget, but there's a caveat that's subject to. So maybe that could be a way to do that as well. Because when we did the step, my amendment for the teachers last year, it was in the budget, but it was that, okay, based on this happening, then will we honor that? And so right there, it's in stone. The money comes in. We don't have to come back and go through an OPLA. And so I strongly support what everybody says. I think we need to make our employees owe. But I also look at every side of it, and so maybe that will be an option that we can possibly look into.
Councilman Mendez?
Thanks. Just one minor tweak to support the last couple people that spoke. I'm not sure that picking up these STEP and COLA makes the employees whole. I think as we've seen with MNPS in particular, the squeeze over a decade has really gotten the comp systems out of whack. And so I believe in you and your substitute. I believe we're going to be able to figure out a way to do it without going mid-year, putting caveats on it. I think we should do it as part of an ongoing step to get them in the vicinity of fair for what they do. And so just a minor tweak in how we're talking about it. Otherwise, supportive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other comments, questions, concerns on the step increase / 1% bump? All right, we're going to go back up to the top. Councilwoman Sora, I did not talk about anything for the Minority Caucus. Didn't want you to get me. So we're going to go back up to the top under Metro Arts. Minority Caucus, add to Metro Arts restorative programs. Councilwoman Suara.
Thank you, Chair. This is a program that the Metro Arts Commission does, and during the budget hearing, they talk about how they're working with the courts. It's a restorative program, and I look at it as, some of the things we need to be investing in are things that are preventive, and we all know that music and arts is a very good tool to use for students. So the Minority Caucus is proposing that we had $100,000 to that program. And in talking with the Arts Commission, this is something that will help increase the program itself, the funding and what they can do with it. It also allows them to be able to have a dedicated person, which they don't have right now, that will be working specifically on the restorative and diversity program. I think there were 2 different programs. And so this person will be able to devote more time, make sure recruit the artists. So it's for that additional person as well as increasing the funding for the program. And I think overall, this will go towards helping our children.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. I think I told the finance folks the wrong thing. So this is under the Metro Arts Commission. This isn't going to juvenile court?
No, this is under Metro Arts Commission,
Okay.
but they do work with the court system on this.
Okay,
But this
okay.
is under the Metro Arts Commission budget
So
that I have it.
do you know specifically the cost for that dedicated person?
Yesterday, I think they said it's about 75 that they're looking at. And in my conversation with them, for me, I think having a dedicated person is a part of it, but also increasing what they're already doing, which is working already. And we've seen a couple of those come to council is part of it. So this is both for the programmatic as well as that additional person or dedicated person working on it.
Okay. Any comments, questions, concerns about the $100,000 for the Metro Arts restorative program? So basically it would be the cost of the dedicated person, and then what's left over in that $100,000 would just go to
The program.
beefing up the program.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, I am not seeing anything on that one. We talked about the codes property inspectors because both Councilwoman Johnston and Councilman Taylor had additional FTEs for codes on their wish list, and Councilman Taylor had 6 and Councilwoman Johnston had 10, and there was actually some overlap between the 2 of them, so I didn't know. You probably don't need to talk about the 2.
No,
codes
I think we feel strongly that we need help in codes. We don't have enough, and I think we're going for the minimalistic. But hey, if we can do the 10, let's go for the 10.
All right. Going further down the list, the mental health court and the veteran mental health court.
Yes, ma'am. I think this is just because there's a lot of conversation about mental health, and this was just a way to be able to add to that conversation and to what is being done. This is already done through the court system, and they do have this court already, and so this is a way for us to just enhance what is being done, and this is for mental health specifically. We're saying that, look, everybody is talking about what is needed. So many people are doing different things, and I do believe that it would take a combination of every little things that we're doing that will make it work overall. And so addressing some in the court system, addressing some through arts, addressing some through schools is how we're going to get our community whole. And so we are humbly wishing to add $50,000 to the mental health court and the veterans mental health court.
So that's not going towards a specific program, it's just increasing their funding?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Councilman Mendez?
Well, I guess y'all know that I am a lawyer and talk to the judges in general sessions every now and then again. Is this number just, for lack of a better phrase, pulled out of thin air, or is it related to some service that they can do for $50,000?
I believe it's related to some service.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
It's related to services. I can bring you detail before the next budget hearing.
Okay, I'll be interested to know, for $50,000, it sounds like a person to be hired. And because otherwise courts don't provide any services other than through human beings doing something. And I'm curious whether this is coming from a particular judge or whether it's the administrator of the courts. I'm interested in where this is coming from, because I think while I love our judges, I don't think individual judges should be seeking out council support for programs. I think it should go through the administrator of the courts, and $50,000 sounds like a person to do something, and I think we shouldn't have individual judges looking for that. But I'm curious what's going on with this, what it's supposed to be for, where it came from. I just want to know more about this one. Thank you.
This particular one, and it's also included in Councilwoman Hurt, request came directly from that, and I believe it's through talking to the court system. But like I said, I can provide additional information at the next meeting or before it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Suara. Any other comments, questions, or concerns about the mental health court and veteran mental health court? Seeing none, we will keep moving down the list. I don't see Councilwoman Welsh here, but hers is to add to fully fund HEALS, a community-based behavioral health crisis intervention program that will work cooperatively with MNPD and other nonprofit organizations. And that's $3,314,000. I know that most of us, if not all of us, received a proposal from HEALS. It's a 3-year proposal. The first year is roughly $800,000. We also have the co-response pilot that's going to be with the Hermitage and North Precinct starting June 28th. My thinking on this was to fund the first year, because we do know that this model has worked in other cities. We don't know how it's going to work in Nashville, but rather than commit to 3 years, we provide the funding for 1 year and get the data and determine for next fiscal year what we want to do in terms of that program. I know that NOAA is pushing the HEALS model. They're wanting a pilot in the other precincts that won't have the co-response model. I have spoken with the mental health cooperative that's going to be working on the pilot, and they tell me that it's essentially 2 different populations that the programs work with. So your co-response is dealing with your more violent calls, and that's why there's an officer and a mental health professional, whereas the HEALS deals more with your soft calls where there isn't initially an indication of violence, and if it does escalate, they would call an officer. So that's my thought process. Also, I don't know if the HEALS model, and I'm meeting with some folks from NOAA to talk about their proposal tomorrow. I don't know if they have the infrastructure in place, because you'd have to have a contract or MOU with the 911 operator so that they know how to identify which calls are which and who to send. There'd also have to be, I believe in their proposal, they said they were going to work with the Department of Mental Health So I think it would be wiser to fund that first year and see how it turns out. But any questions, comments, or concerns about this proposal? Councilwoman Sawyer, you're still lit up.
Oh. I'm glad I wasn't saying anything. I didn't know I had an open mic. No, I just want to speak in support of it. And I do like the idea of trying both the option that the Metro Department, Police Department wants to do, the co-op, and then this other ILS program, and to be able to see the effect of both of them side by side. I think it will be good. I think one of the concerns is always that, you know, just like we do with our teachers, we do with our police officers as well. We want them to be mental health professionals all at the same time. I think this model allows us to use professionals going directly to nonviolent calls, and I do support that. So I just want to speak in support of funding that.
Councilwoman Porterfield and then Councilman Cash.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and I apologize. For some reason, my wish list items aren't showing up on here, and Ms. Maria is working on it so that you all will be able to see my wish list items as well. But I also stand strongly in support of the HEALS model. There's been a lot of data around the country of various municipalities that have been moving towards this type of model or the co-response model. There's a lot of data around the CAHOOTS program and how effective this has been, and I really ask my colleagues to strongly support this model. If someone is sick, you call a doctor, and if we have someone that's in a mental health crisis, it's imperative that we have a mental health specialist there who knows how to deal with the individual in crisis, so that we're not inadvertently exasperating the situation and possibly escalating a situation. So I strongly support this model. I'm thankful for everyone who's worked hard to get us to this point. And I think it's a great program and a great use of our funds. So I just ask our colleagues to please support it. Thank you, Chair.
Councilman Cash.
Thank you, Chair. I am in support of this concept, but I really want to have an understanding of what you referred to as the infrastructure and making sure that it's in place. So I really am just trying to understand it better. So we would be hiring employees, and those employees would be with the police department, but just a different job designation, or it would go to a nonprofit, or help me understand.
So it's a separate, and I don't have the proposal in front of me, but it's a separate mental health. I believe it's a nonprofit. I can't recall the name.
So they wouldn't be Metro employees.
No, they would not be Metro employees.
Okay.
And the mental health cooperative, that's also a separate entity from Metro. Those aren't Metro employees either.
Okay. Okay. Well, like I said, I am in support of this concept and think it's the right direction to go. But I still just want to understand. I'm just not seeing exactly the infrastructure and how it plays out as well as I would like.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'm going to go to Councilwoman Benedict because she hasn't spoken. Then I'm coming back to you, Councilwoman Porterfield.
Thank you, Chair. So I actually have the proposal for services here that Councilmember Cash was just asking about. I'm going to get that to our council staff to get a copy made for everyone. I am in support of this as well. I think I would like to see it funded more than 1 year, but I think a 1 year funding would be great. I am the wife of a social worker, and I will tell you that she has been in Napier and Casey, and she's been in there without a gun. She's been in there knocking door to door, helping to solve crises. And I think that the HEALS program is an example of where we can bring somebody in without a gun and help solve a problem no matter where it is throughout the city. So I am in support of this, and I hope that we're able to get this funded as well. Again, I'll get this proposal to Rosie and make sure everybody here and the entire council has a copy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilwoman Porterfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was also going to say that the information is on NOAA's website, and they have emailed that to us as well. So if you search HEALS in your inbox, you should see some emails of individuals that have asked that we support this program, and there is a link that will take you to the particulars of the program. Again, these type of programs have been working all across the country. I've spoken with elected officials literally across the United States and have worked with them and studied various models. And I can send data to our colleagues, or I can send it to Ms. Rosie so that she can send it out to you all. Just different case studies about where these types of programs are working and where we're seeing alternative street response models and how effective it has been with making sure that people get the appropriate services. So again, I'll be sending that information out to Ms. Rosie to disseminate to the body. Thank you, Chair.
And if after you've reviewed the proposal, if there continues to be a lot of questions, if you could reach out to Director Cooper and let him know, and then he can let me know, and I can have the organization come to the next work session to answer any questions. Any other comments, questions, concerns on the proposal to fund HEALS? All right, moving down the list. And before I move down the list, Councilwoman Porterfield, you said your items weren't on here. Is there anything on here that's on your list that's not on here?
My items, Madam Chair, are $125,000 for the Recreation Centers program, $25,000 for the Bang the Table software, $1.2 million for the MNPS Advocacy Centers, $100,000 for the Metro Arts Restorative Programs, which I believe Councilwoman Suarez spoke on, additional codes, property inspectors, 7 unpaid days for MNPS support staff, which is $1.4 million, expanding the library services to Curbside, as well as the Friday services for libraries, which are $542K and $763K respectively. Extended funding for our Metro Parks Community Centers, which is $763. And expansion of the disabilities program, I didn't see that on there, so I think that's one that hasn't been listed. That's right at $105,000, and it will help provide access for individuals with disabilities. The civil service pay plan, which is 6.2. The East Convenience Center position, which is right at 60,000. I believe that's on there. And additional staffing for both fire and EMS, which is 5.5 million. And then the additional funding for therapy services at the Office of Family Safety. And that one, I did not have a dollar amount for that one. But that makes my list, Madam Chair.
So as we go down the list, if there's something that is also on your list and you want to add some additional comment, just raise your hand. And then when we're done, if there's something we haven't addressed that's on your list, remind me.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. Councilwoman Suarez, we're back to the under Human Resources Minority Caucus add training materials.
Thank you, Chair. This came from the HR department, and this is requesting to add some money so that they can do some training for staff. And I'll let Councilmember Stiles also speak to that, because the Minority Caucus says the training materials are $30,000, and she has it at $50,000. But it's talking about the same thing, about making sure that we're able to give them some money to add some training materials.
Councilwoman Stiles.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I added to that amount. I had a secondary conversation with Shannon Hall, and she asked if it could be 50 instead of 30, due to the fact that there was a survey that was done within Metro Human Resources on what the needs were for staff and what was lacking, and many people asked for professional development, and these training materials will go towards that. And the hope is that this will be incremental. So if we start at 50 this year, perhaps we can move up 75 or 100 for next year.
Okay. Any comments, questions, or concerns about the training materials for HR? All right, seeing none, we will keep on going down the list. Next is under Information Technology, Bang the Table software. Councilwoman Suarez.
Yes, this has to do with the conversation we've been having for about a year now about a platform that allows council members to be able to have a conversation that is not in violation of the Sunshine Law. And so we've been working with IT. You should have received a report from me, from Director Cooper, talking about the process, where we are, we're talking to, and also the cost of this software. And so based on the estimated cost that was given to us, it's between 13 and 25, depending on what we decide to do. And so this is requesting for that software because I do think that, oftentimes we don't even get to ask questions, even generic questions about the bill until second hearing. And so you have all that conversation on the floor, and it just takes a long time. I think this will allow us to be more efficient. The directors looked at it. We also look at it at the Executive Council, and this will allow us to be able to do this, and it will not be in violation. And for that cost, I think we should do it. And so I'm requesting, and so that's what that $25,000 is for. It's for the software.
Councilwoman Stiles?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say I strongly support this funding. Having been on the committee with Councilmember Zwara, I'm very grateful that she put this idea forth, and to be able to see that it's a functionality that we are desperately in need of, and how often we run into Open Meetings Act issues. This is an investment that is good for the benefit of the council now, but in the future. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions, or concerns about the Bang the Table software? Councilwoman Johnston?
My concern would be just, would we actually use this? I think there's probably a way to do like a free trial type thing before we allocate funds. And I think it would be probably beneficial to do that just to see how it works in real time and if people actually utilize it before we pay for it.
Councilwoman Swara.
Thank you. I will give you a very good practical example of how it can be used. We were trying to draft a letter to thank Regions Bank for donating money for affordable housing. It's a good gesture, and it's a good thing for us to be able to thank them, to be able to encourage everybody else. The way the process sits now, Councilmember Allen drafted the letter, wanted me to look at it, but she cannot send it to me to read. She had to send it to the council office. The council office sends it to me, I make my amendment, I send it back to them, they send it to her, and we've done this so many times, and it takes days to even get a letter, something that should not be that difficult to do. That's one way. The other thing that I also explained during my time is that oftentimes, for me as an example, I'm looking through my bills on the weekend, and I just need a clarification question. There is a school that is being built in Councilmember Rutherford District. I wanted to ask, is it a charter school? Is it a regular school? But I cannot call him and ask him that question. That's a very small question that I can ask real quick. We're not discussing the bill. We're not making any decision. We're just clarifying things. And I think waiting until, and you all see that sometimes I come on the floor and I say, take it out of consent because I have a question. And so I take bills off of consent that I have minimal question about, but I cannot even ask until, or email Director Cooper, bless his heart, about every single thing. So those are the little things that I think that we can do, and I think it will be utilized. Now, at the Executive Council meeting, somebody did raise the issue that you raised, and the Executive Council did talk to Bang the Table and ask if we can have a trial run, and they've agreed to that. So, but what this is doing is that post that trial run, the money is there if we so choose to go forward with it.
Did you still want? Councilwoman Stiles?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe it was last week or the week before, we also had an opportunity to get trained on this software so you could see how it does work in real time. And I'm not sure if that's a possibility to, if that's been recorded. That might be helpful if there are additional questions about how the system works and if it's a beneficial investment.
Councilwoman Swara, did you have anything to add?
No, I think, it's been demonstrated to the committee members and to the executive members and the vice mayor. And what we're doing right now is just for council member communication. We have the opportunity to even extend it for another 5,000, where we can actually have direct interaction with the constituents, which some of the other cities are doing. We're not doing that at this time, but I do think that I can tell you how frustrating it is when you cannot just get a clarifying question. I think having to come on the floor, come to the committee to ask every little question that doesn't impact, I think it will be used. I know I will use it. And so I humbly request that you all support it.
All right, just scanning to make sure there are no other questions. Councilman Rutherford?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm fully supportive of this effort, and I think it would be greatly beneficial to our council and to future councils. I want to raise one concern, though, and just see if anyone has heard, or if Councilmember Suara may have heard anything along these lines, because I know that we're bound by state law, obviously, and the state legislature oftentimes likes to get in the way of things that we want to do. And so is there any potential that they would potentially want to preempt us on this?
That before I started we talked to the vice mayor about doing a task force to look into this. I actually found in the code, the Tennessee code, that says we can do this. And the city of Knoxville actually have something not as robust as this, but along the same line. So the state already have it in the code that we can set up something like this with certain parameters. And so as the committee was deliberating, or the task force, I make sure that Director Cooper was there, looking at all of that and making sure that it does what it's supposed to do. Now, we would not get to install and finalize it without sending the product to the comptroller's office for approval or for them to look at it, but it meets every requirement that is in the Tennessee code, as it is right now. And Director Cooper, please feel free to chime in.
Oh, gosh, what is that?
Just as a little background, the city of Knoxville is actually who petitioned the state to create this exception. It was either the city of Knoxville or it may have been Knox County. But anyway, there were some open meetings issues there in Knox County that resulted in some litigation. And as a response to that, they petitioned the state for this authority. And to my knowledge, they're the only ones that are using it, but it applies statewide.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see any other hands on this issue. Moving on, under library, Councilwoman Allen isn't here, but one of her things is also on the minority caucus list, so we'll just go down the list. NASA funding.
We'll be pulling that. I added that after the hearing because I saw a place where they had a program that was federally funded, but is no longer funded, and I wanted it to continue. Since putting this list together, I found out that that program has actually met its objectives and is no longer needed, so I will be withdrawing that both from my list and the minority caucus list.
Okay. Curbside library services.
Yes, this was extensively discussed also during the budget hearing, and this is a service that the library was able to provide, and it was very helpful, especially during the COVID season too. And so when the library was talking to us, I think it was either or. Neither of this is being funded at this time, but they were looking at, can we have a curbside library? And that curbside library is at a cost of $543,000. And if they had a Friday services, it would be $763,000. We are saying that both are very much needed, not an either or. But both the minority caucus and I feel that this is a service that we want to be added, and we're humbly requesting support.
All right, any comments? Councilwoman Porterfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Both of those were items on my wish list as well. I think one thing that we also should consider, the curbside service would be very helpful for individuals with limited mobility and individuals with disabilities who may have a harder time accessing some of the buildings. A great example, the Southeast Library, it's a pretty long walk from the parking lot to get into the community center and then into the library. And there have been conversations about how we can make it more accessible for individuals with various levels of mobility, but it is something that is a bit challenging. The curbside service that was able to be utilized during COVID allowed individuals to drive right up and return their books without having to find parking. This is also something that makes it more accessible for mothers with young children. If anyone here is a parent of young children or had young children, you know how challenging it could be to try to get out of the car, with multiple small children, especially when you're just going in for 5 minutes. So I think that, anytime we can look at increasing services for our families as well as individuals with disabilities, I mean, that's definitely something that we need to consider. So again, I just ask my colleagues to support both of these proposals. Thank you, Chair.
Councilwoman Stiles and Councilwoman Henderson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to speak in support. I think anything that we can do to encourage reading, especially in our children, and they're struggling already in terms of having aptitude, I think we need to give to the libraries. Thank you.
Councilwoman Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm glad to see colleagues putting this on our list. I had kind of pursued this line of questioning when Director Oliver was here, and I think he spoke to, in looking at kind of either or, the board and staff at the library felt that Curbside was the service that they would prioritize. Council Lady Allen here had proposed Friday at 3 branches. I'm looking kind of at the differential in the cost there. And I guess I'm just wanting to maybe understand from colleagues on the minority caucus, is the $763,000, is that provided from the library to add Friday service with kind of the same Monday, Thursday hours at all branches? I just didn't know if there was sort of a tiered approach to that. Council Lady Allen proposed 3 branches. Is it half the time on a Friday, or I didn't know if we'd kind of broken that down comparatively.
The 763 included the 475, but it's to do it at more locations. And so just going through that conversation that we had and the amounts that was suggested by Mr. Kent Oliver? Yeah. Mr. Oliver. That's the amount that we heard would allow them, if they had, and if you all remember from the budget hearings, it's like, if you do have extra money, what would that be and what can you do? And so for that, that was the amount that was put forward for Fridays.
And then, Madam Chair, may I address Councilor Suara?
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Suara, do you recall, was that indeed all branches for regular Friday workday, or was that, I don't recall in the context of the questions we were asking there, if it was sort of broken apart. I'm just trying to understand.
Councilwoman
There's a
Porterfield.
middle path there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is for all branches. We received an email from Director Cooper on the 24th, and it came from Director Oliver, and it said that it's a spreadsheet that outlines the cost of fully opening the library system on Fridays at the remaining branch locations. So that should be for all of them. The cost was $220,000 higher annually than the Curbside request of $763,000. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. Thank you for the clarification. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, I'm scanning the room, looking for other hands for comments, questions, concerns. If there was if the situation came down to where we could only choose one, is there a preference for the Friday services or the Curbside services?
I said Curbside, she said Friday. I guess that's why we say let's do both. Because, I mean, we're dealing with different part of the population and what each one of them would like. Councilmember Porterfield talk about accessibility for disabled people and things like that. So if I have to pick one, I'll pick Curbside, but my colleague here thinks that Friday is the one. So, Madam Chair, I hope we can do both of them.
Councilwoman Gamble.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to weigh in on the Friday and Curbside. My preference would be Friday. However, I think if Ken Oliver expressed that the Curbside is what's most used and what's most needed, then that's kind of where we need to go. So if we can verify with the library what would be the most beneficial and go from there.
Councilwoman Porterfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, agree with Councilwoman Soror. If possible, we definitely would love to see both of these services, but if there's only one, I would definitely throw my support behind the curbside services for the reasons of accessibility, as well as making our library more accessible for mothers with small children. Thank you.
Any other? Councilwoman Stiles?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would be in support of curbside as well.
Any other comments, questions, concerns on if we had to only choose one? All right, moving along. We covered NASA, Curbside Friday. All right, Metro Council office, and Councilman Rosenberg is not here, but I will say what I know about this one. Add funding to increase efficiency of and oversight by council office. With greater financial oversight, expect significant savings to be generated, resulting in revenue neutral, and that's for a cost of $650,000. And I believe the intent of this is to address staffing needs in the council office. And to my understanding, there isn't a specific breakdown of what those staffing needs are. I've had some conversations with Director Cooper, and he's given his personal opinion on what some possible staffing needs would be. Director Cooper, do you mind sharing those thoughts? Are you on? The green button is...
Okay, it's on. These are just my personal thoughts as someone who's leaving. But I think if there has been a significant increase in staff over the past 4 years. When I was here before, the staff was about half the size of what it is currently. Looking forward, if additional staff was available, I see a couple of needs. One is in the legislative end. We have one legislative clerk now, Danielle, who is working incredibly hard to stay on top of everything. I think an additional clerk who could help with legislation, coordination, and filing and all that would be helpful. I think an additional administrative person to help with scheduling and notice of meetings and things like that would be helpful. So those are the two positions that I think would add value to the office. But that's just my personal opinion. Obviously, I know there are other opinions, and I totally respect that.
Councilwoman Henderson.
Thank you, Chair Toombs. I appreciate very much Mr. Cooper's insight on that. Colleagues, we've been talking about this for a really long time, and I thought I had understood, and I don't know where Councilman Syracuse's work is. I think the Vice Mayor had sort of charged Councilman Syracuse at the time as pro tem. I mean, I feel like budget comes around and we've perhaps not, I think several among us have kind of thought about how with existing staff or with added staff, how we might support the council better in the work that we do. And so I always think this is very important to discuss at budget time, but I just wonder, are we kind of adding any additional knowledge or thought? Not that it has not been looked at critically and diligently in past years, but has not necessarily come to bear internal to the budget cycle. And so I didn't know, I had understood from the Vice Mayor that then pro tem, now just regular colleague, Mr. Syracuse would have a proposal of sorts for us at this budget.
I haven't seen a proposal. Director Cooper?
I cannot speak for Councilman Syracuse or the process. I drafted a survey some months ago, which Austin actually put into kind of a ready-to-go format. There was some delay getting some information specific to IT needs and services that are available. That was then added into the survey, and I don't know if I don't know what the status is. I can follow up with him on that, but to my knowledge, the survey itself is ready to go at any time.
Okay. And then Chair Toombs, did Councilman Rosenberg provide as part of that suggestion a particular breakdown or proposal? No, just
Not
kind
to
of
my
a
knowledge.
placeholder in that regard. Okay, well, I would just respectfully kind of point us to, I believe Councilor Wiener looked at that previously. I believe Mr. Jameson looked at it previously. We've got Mr. Cooper's input. We've got what Pro Tem has done. I mean, there's been a lot of dialogue about this and a fair amount of consistency in our body feeling that for us to do our jobs well, we need to kind of reorganize how our support works. What I have said in past budget cycles is before we add more people, can we please make sure that we have organized things with our existing staff? I think it's incumbent upon us to do that. And I continue to be frustrated that with each year passing, we don't do that. So I know, again, I was kind of just going to defer to our colleagues that I thought were working on this time. So if we could maybe, Madam Chair, respectfully reach out to those folks and just understand and garner the body of knowledge that has been put into this space, because I think it's unfortunate if we go yet another budget cycle and we don't address this. We are halfway through the second term. We have been talking about this since the first year of my first term. So I do appreciate that we have added some positions, but I don't know respectfully if we have organized those in such a way that it optimizes how our office is working in support of this body. So thank you.
Councilman Cash?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to support everything Councilmember Henderson just said, and this seems like a good idea to me. But again, so it's a $600,000 request. Is that right?
650,000.
650,000, and we've heard kind of two specific types of positions that sound fine to me. But I'd like to see the more of what those are and. How, and like Councilmember Henderson said, how we're going to organize it. And I think that staff is awesome and has served our requests and are experts in their areas, and don't question that at all. But I kind of would like to see how additional employees might serve our needs and our constituent service needs without harming the other things that they do. Thank you.
Councilwoman Stiles?
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I address Councilmember Henderson, her question?
Sure.
Yeah. So we are in the process, the teams that Councilmember Syracuse put together. We're working on a survey for all of council to find out what our needs are, what we would like to see. And that got hemmed up a little bit in the last couple of months. So we are resurrecting that. So if that'll be helpful, it's coming.
Councilwoman Henderson?
Is it coming in enough time to inform this budget season?
Councilwoman Stiles, do you know if the timeline will be in time for budget?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to say probably not.
All right.
And I appreciate that. And I guess what I would just say is I feel like sometimes we're reinventing the wheel because we have already had these conversations. So again, respectfully, I would just ask us to kind of go back to the well that's already been plumbed a few times and see if we can kind of consolidate some information. Mr. Cooper's thoughts there, obviously valid, having been in this role as many years as he has. But I think, it's incumbent on us to show the need, which we all know is there. So I would hate to see us go through another budget cycle for lack of the survey, because respectfully, I don't, I think we can get at very accurate, diligent, fair assessment based on previous conversations, previous committees, previous thoughts, previous departmental leadership. Like, I think if we give some intention to it in this cycle, we can get to where we need to be to justify it without waiting on the survey till next cycle. Thank you.
Councilwoman Johnston?
Sort of to reiterate what Council Lady Henderson is saying, I just have a hard time allocating dollars without a plan. And I don't know that we have a plan even for making sure that what we have now is working efficiently and effectively. And so, you know, unless we can hit the gas on what, you know, what everybody's working on, and knowing that we started this conversation, at least as far as I'm concerned, with this being my first term, was months and months and months ago. I just have a hard time allocating dollars without a plan, and we don't have a plan right now. So if we're going to allocate these dollars, we need to see something. So.
And I tend to agree with you, Councilwoman Johnston. I would like to see some itemization of what that money would go to, rather than it just being a chunk of money just sitting. Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, we'll keep on rolling down the list. Councilwoman Stiles, you're under MMPD. It's add $750 incentive for new officers to stay for their first year. Oh, sorry. There you go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in speaking with Commander Stevens, speaking with Chief Drake, knowing that in every single class that comes through, almost 50% drop, and then out of that number, by the time they finish, we have additional individuals that leave and go to other counties to make more money or leave the state. And we are paying for people to get trained and then go elsewhere. This money would be allocated so that we're giving an incentive for at least 1 year. And so if those individuals want to leave after a year, they can, and we can get a new group of people coming in so we can try and stave some of the bleeding that we've had off of the force.
Councilwoman Johnston.
Have we talked to see how effective that would be from the people that know? I mean, I don't want to, it's not that much money, honestly, but at the same time, I want it to be effective. And so if it's not effective, it's a waste, whether it's $1 or $100,000, right? So have we talked to MNPD to say, would $750 be effective to keep a police officer that otherwise would want to move for whatever reason they are leaving the department? Have we?
Councilwoman Stiles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe I just said that I spoke to Commander Stevens and Chief Drake before putting this forward, and both were in support of that. I think that's the answer. So I believe that officers would be incentivized to remain for that 1 year.
Councilwoman Porterfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Stiles, for your work on this. And I know you have a very strong commitment to public safety, even if we don't always agree on the approach. I appreciate your commitment to it. My question, Madam Chair, and please forgive me, I wasn't able to attend the hearing when MMPD gave their budget proposal. If I remember correctly, though, does MMPD operate with a surplus each year? Do they have money still left in their budget?
I'm not certain if they operate with a surplus, and I'm going to ask Tom to help me out on that. I do know that they were using, according to Chief Drake, a lot of attrition savings to pay for some things within the department. Okay. Tom says he'd have to check, so I can't say yes or no whether or not they have a surplus.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. My humble request would be that if they are operating in that manner, that we're not allocating additional money. I mean, we have shortages with our teachers, with our firefighters, with almost every metro department. So if we are making an exception for one department to give additional pay bonuses, I think that we need to make that exception for all of our metro departments. So respectfully, Council Lady Styles, I would ask that we did not support this initiative. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments, concerns on the incentive? I see Councilwoman Henderson and then Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to inquire particular to the sources of funding for this wish list item, and I see it coming up, Council Lady Styles, in several among your wish list items. Harpeth Hills Golf Course, Warner Golf Course, both of which are in District 34. And so I just wanted to inquire as to that as a source for funding, kind of what supports that, or what increase did you make to use that as your source, please?
So before Councilwoman Styles answers that, Councilwoman Henderson, so I think you heard my spiel at the beginning about the
I was not here at the start,
Okay.
Madam Chair. I apologize.
Oh, no, that's fine.
redundant.
So today we're going to go through each of the items, and obviously in talking about them, we have to talk about the cost. I didn't want us to get too bogged down in the revenue sources because I have submitted a draft substitute to finance so that they can start working on the revenue sources. And so hopefully that draft will be ready on Monday, and then at the work session on Monday, we can dive into the revenue sources. So I don't want you to get too into the revenue source for this particular item. And there were several council members earlier who voiced their opposition to taking anything from the golf courses. But we can dive back into that on Monday.
Yes, ma'am. Appreciate that. Thank you for the clarification.
Councilman Parker and then Councilman Nash. Or should I call you Councilman Rosenberg since you're in his seat?
Yeah, that's right. I'm still back here. Well, thank you, Chair, for the recognition. You know, I've talked about this with various folks, and it's my understanding that more of our, like, for lack of a better phrase, retention cliff is a little bit later in career. We have like an early vesting for MNPD officers. I don't know the numbers right off the top of my head, but I guess I was just curious, like, you know, are we seeing folks leave the department within that first year? Because it was my understanding that it was a little further along where we're kind of, you know, not competitive with other cities, if you want to put it that way.
That I don't know. That's but I can send that question to Chief Drake and get some additional information from him. But I don't know the answer to that.
I think the question would be sort of that year 1 versus year 5 or 8, whatever the early vesting occurs. So that would be my question. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Nash?
Based on my experience, I don't think in the first year officers leave for lack of funds. I think, especially in the training academy, there's people who think they know what policing's about and then get to the academy and find maybe it's not really what they thought it was going to be and decide to go in a different direction, whether it be they don't like the physical training or they can't get through the law training. As Councilman Parker had mentioned, the money issue is farther down, kind of mid-career, where the pay scales over the past few years have become kind of flattened out, and people aren't making their steps. And hopefully we're beginning to correct that this year with this pay plan that's moving forward. So just my thoughts.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? All right, moving down the list. Minority Caucus, add the 3 unpaid days. Councilwoman Suara.
Thank you, Chair. So for clarification, I've been speaking as budget chair for the Minority Caucus, but also speaking as to my wish list, which mirrored it. This is one of those where there's a difference between my wish list and the Minority Caucus. And this speaks to the 7 unpaid days for the support staff. A lot has been said about it. And I do think that we need to fix this. So the Minority Caucus in our wish list wanted to go for a midway. and decide to put 3 days on the wish lists for the unpaid days. On my wish list, it's at the 1.4 million, which is the entire 7 days, because I do think we need to do the 7 days rather than trying to prorate it. And so the minority caucus is saying if we cannot fund 7 days, can we at least do 3 days to be able to offer something? And that's what that 600,000 is. And I have 1.4, and saying, please let us do the 7 days. That is on the unpaid days. The next item there is on the Advocacy Center, and both the Minority Caucus and I have the 1.2 million. During the conversation with MMPS, we all realized that even though this is a good budget, for the first time had money to social-emotional learning, it was not enough. And there were so many parts of social-emotional learning that is unfunded, from the psychology or counselor to student ratio, and even the Advocacy Center. So in a conversation with Director Battle, my question to her is, okay, if you have $1 million and you cannot get the 5.2 million for the counselors, what would that do? In her email to me, she says the Advocacy Center that was funded by Metro at 2.5 million, taking that 2.5 million and the money from the ARP money from the federal government only funds 57 advocacy centers. There's supposed to be 77 elementary schools, and even with what they have now between the federal government and Metro, it's only 57 elementary schools that are funded. So there's still 12. No, if I get my math right. I think they're funding 55, and so there's 17. Anyway, we can add the numbers later. So there's still about 17 unfunded advocacy centers. Even the advocacy center that we're touting, it's not all of them. And so the cost to fully fund every elementary school and have an advocacy center in all of the 72 elementary school, instead of the 55 that we have, would be the 1.2 million. And that's where that 1.2 million is coming from.
Okay, so two things. One, we're going to talk about the unpaid days first, and then we will talk about the advocacy centers.
Yes, ma'am.
And I did ask for someone from MMPS to come and clarify some of the numbers, because I had heard different numbers.
Okay.
So, Mark, if you want to come up, and we'll talk about those 7 days, 3 versus 7 days as he's coming up.
So I do think the 7 is what we should do. You heard from a lot of people at the budget hearing talking about, being in MMPS for 20 days. When there's a public holiday, they don't get to be paid, and a whole lot. And I think this is a budget that is investing in our people. We're proud that for the first time, our teachers are the top paid in Tennessee. And I think that our children also deal with our support staff. And this is, while I like the caucus middle ground, I don't think it's enough. I do think it should be the 1.4.
Councilwoman Porterfield? Oh, it would help if I turned on your mic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also strongly stand in support of the full 7 days for MMPS support staff. You all know that I'm a former teacher. Our support staff employees are some of the lowest paid employees in our school system. Just, I believe it was budget 2018, we were advocating for the pay of our paraprofessionals, which at that time, the average paraprofessional was making $20,000. There's no way that anyone should be working in Nashville, going to work every single day, Monday through Friday, working a full day, taking care of our children, our most vulnerable population of students, and not making enough money to keep a roof over their head. And our support staff employees are working multiple jobs just trying to swing it. Some of these individuals have doctorate degrees, and yes, they could go and get a more lucrative job, because I've been asked that question before, why don't they go and get a job that pays more? These are individuals that are investing in our youth and in our children, love their job, love the children, love our schools, and yet we are not funding them at a level that is appropriate. There has been some misinformation, miscommunication, people thinking that these are vacation days. These are not vacation days. When we have days when they're called in-service days, and our teachers are receiving training that the support staff members are not receiving. So one example is if a student has a severe disability or a behavior, some type of severe behavior problem, the team meets to discuss this so that everyone who's working with that child will know the safety plan and know how to safely handle that child in the event of a crisis. Well, when the support staff members that work with that child don't get that information, they don't know what to do in those cases, and they are at a disadvantage. It also impacts them financially because their checks are not balanced the way that teachers' checks are balanced. A teacher can have their salary broken up over 12 months so that they get the same check every 2 weeks. Paraprofessionals don't have, support staff, don't have that option because they are hourly employees. So what happens when there are holidays and days that they're not scheduled to work, when everyone else is scheduled to work, their checks are now short. So it's harder for them to balance. They're already the lowest paid employees, and it's harder for them to balance their personal finances when they're not having their regular and consistent pay that the other employees have. So, you know, I know that it's $1 million. That's a small ask that is going to go such a long way to make this more equitable for some of the hardest working MMPS employees. So I agree with Councilwoman Sora, 3 days is not enough, y'all. We have to do this. We cannot keep leaving some people behind. We can't keep doing this and only elevating some people and not elevating everybody. So I strongly support the 7 days.
What she said.
Councilman Cash.
Thank you. I'm also supportive for the many reasons that Councilmember Porterfield spelled out. I do want to ask, since Mr. North is at the podium, can you help me understand, like, Councilmember Porterfield talked about, you know, the support staff, like, we don't want them to miss the meetings that are talking about a child's situation or planning for the future. You know, IEP meetings get scheduled on this. With this 1.4 million, I guess I want to know what employees we're talking about. We're talking about paraprofessionals, and beyond that, are we talking like campus supervisors?
I think it should be on. It's the public table, right? Austin. Okay.
It says podium on it.
I don't see something that says podium. Can you talk now, Mark?
Am I on? All right. Now, my understanding of the issue is school-based 10-month employees. Actually 10-month employees. So that when there are in-service days, so when students are not in school, the teachers still work, but the support staff does not when students are not in school. And those add up to 7 days throughout the school year. Those are the days that we're talking about.
Right. I'm trying to understand so every 10-month employee, so a school-based 10-month employee, would it include bus drivers?
It would include bus drivers, and you're right. It would include all 10-month employees that are not certificated.
So when you said school-based,
all 10-month employees are what I would call school-based.
So it would include like campus supervisors. Like there are two things here. One, the notion that these are some of our least like lowest paid employees and need help, and I fully support that. But then on the other side, the sense of those employees that need to be there in the building, working on, you know, that are connected to students, like paraprofessionals. So I kind of have two different feelings about it, and kind of was wanting to fish for exactly what employees we're talking about, and I think I've gotten clarification on it. So the support staff that would staff the advocacy centers, at this point in time, they would be, like, assuming that goes through, those would be 10-month classified employees like we're talking about. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
My understanding is they are 10-month. classified employees.
So if we have, so if we're hiring new employees to help students manage their behavior and make good choices, I would certainly think that we would want them there on the days that these teachers are planning, and discussing students and their futures, and so the fact that we are looking at these advocacy centers does make me even more feel like these employees need the training, because they're, and I mean this in a negative way, but they're coming without, new employees at least will be coming without the educational background that teachers have, and because they're classified employees, right? So they're not coming with the same training and education. So I think it's vitally important that they be there on those days that those training are taking place. So I'm going to support this, and I do want to talk about the advocacy centers more, but I'll wait till we get to that.
Any additional questions, comments, concerns on the professional days? Councilman Nash?
I guess that raises the question. Are these 7 days that are being advocated, will these employees then have to be on campus, or is this going to be a paid day off?
Councilwoman Porterfield?
In-service days, they will be required to be on campus. So they would be working that day. So that it's not a vacation day for them, it's a day for them to work.
Any other questions, comments, concerns about the unpaid professional development days? Councilwoman Johnston?
Thank you. So are we, when we talk about the 10-month employees, I get it for the support staff to be there. My sister is a teacher, and she couldn't do her job without those support staff. But when we're talking about staff like bus drivers and things like, there's obviously no reason for them. So is this across the board? So for some, it would just be a raise, basically. Because why would we have a bunch of bus drivers or whatever? You know what I mean? Like people that don't necessarily aren't part of curriculum. Okay. Okay.
So I can see how the perception would be for a raise, right? When we're in the classroom and there's like a teacher and there's like 30 students or 20-something students, and you may have an assistant or paraprofessional with you, you may not. A bus driver has a bus of, I don't even know, 50, 60 kids on the bus. Sometimes there's 2 kids seated on one seat on the bus. Many times there are 3 kids seated on the seat of the bus. So they are having to manage the behavior of a full bus full of kids. And many times we will get calls because the bus will have to pull over because kids are fighting. And there's policies and procedures in place that they have to do to make sure that they're keeping all of the children on that bus safe. So just using this as an example, this will give our bus drivers opportunities to get more trainings on behavior management, positive behavior intervention, teaching them how to work with students to have, positive and appropriate behavior on the bus to keep them safe. So this isn't like a sneaky way to just try to get people raises. Like, this is a way to make sure that our employees have the best training so they can take care of our most valuable asset, which is our kids.
Councilwoman Johnston?
Do we have those trainings, if they show up for in-service days, do we have those trainings in place so that we're getting our exercise today, at least, up and down, up and down. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're allocating these dollars properly and that it's going to go, if we're doing it, that it's getting spent in a wise way and that they are getting training. We can't say, oh, let's bring them all in and then them just sit there and go, well, I don't, that they don't want to do that either, wouldn't think.
Mm-hmm. Councilwoman Porterfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I hope I'm not overstepping, Mr. North. Like I feel like a MNPS employee right now. So when I was a special education coach, like, this is what we did. Like, we trained members across the city, educators across the city, whether those are principals or support staff, on how to have these how to support students with various behavior needs. So we do have MNPS, does have those trainings in place. They have individuals that provide these trainings. So it would just be a matter of, the logistics of setting it up. which would have to go through, of course, like MNPS. So if we approve this money, it is my thought, and Mr. North can confirm, but it's my thought that they would then go ahead and set up these various trainings. And the behavior training is just one that I gave an example of. You know, they have to do things like CPR training, and they have to there's a myriad of trainings that they need to make sure that they're able to successfully take care of the kids.
Any further questions? Councilman Cash?
Thank you, and I think I'll be short because Councilmember Porterfield said almost exactly what I wanted to say, and I will just convey to everybody and to Mr. North that you know, we've talked this, and I want to talk about this more when we get to Advocacy Centers, but this year and last year, we in council have talked about social emotional learning a lot, and we, you know, we're not, we don't usually get into educational pedagogy and policy. We provide the school board with money, and we do talk about what the increases are going towards. But I would say that for SEL to be successful, it's going to be more than just some of the certain things that are on their line item, but it's going to take everybody. So I'm not just asking a question here, but encouraging Mr. North that please convey that it is important that these employees get the trainings on SEL and how to manage students. And like this, to me, this is, we're being asked and asking that there be kind of a culture shift in schools. It's not just it's not, like I said a couple of weeks ago, it's not just a fad. I think this is a positive culture shift, and it's going to take everybody. And yeah, that's what I want to say for now, but I do want to talk about advocacy centers more.
Councilman Gamble?
Thank you, Chair. And I first want to say I fully support this request to fund the 7 unpaid days, or to fund training days is really what it is. Fund training days for support staff at MNPS. My question, though, is for MNPS. Is there a reason why this money wasn't requested or put in the budget, or is there a reason why you all haven't included support staff and training in the past?
Not sure I can talk about the past and that sort of thing, but it is part of the aspirational budget priorities that the school board included and passed on, and I think you have access to the document. It includes and includes amount that is sort of per day, what that would be.
Thank you. I just wanted to find out or use this time to see if there was some issue with that, but I fully support funding this program. Thank you.
All right, Councilwoman Porterfield, before we start talking about advocacy centers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This will be the last thing that I say about it. Y'all see I'm real passionate about this. To Councilman Cash's point about it taking everyone in our school system, y'all, our schools are using custodians to help when kids are in crisis. We literally use every adult in that building and safety plans to make sure that they can keep our kids safe. We have kids who elope and will run out of buildings and run onto busy streets. Like, it literally takes every person in that school. So that's why it's so important to make sure that every single person in that school building receives adequate training so that they can help care for our kids. And to Councilmember Gamble's point, and more so for the viewing audience, the budget that MNPS supported was a continuity budget. So what they provided to us was to continue their services and not have service cuts. The aspirational budget that they gave us was, if we can get more funding, these are the things that we needed. So, you know, there are so many additional needs that our school system has that have not quite yet been funded. I know we're talking about those 7 days and we're talking about those advocacy centers, but there are a ton of needs. So, you know, this is just one step to get us a little bit closer to where we need to go. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Mr. North, so I wanted you to come out because I've been hearing different numbers when we talk about the advocacy centers, And then also, I think people talk about the social emotional learning bucket along with the advocacy centers and kind of combine them. So can you tell us what the specific need is in terms of advocacy centers, social emotional learning, and if you can add in how the federal dollars that are coming to MNPS, how those will factor into those needs?
I'm not sure I can completely explain or describe all of the federal funds.
Right, and I know there's still a lot of a lot of gray area.
So within the aspirational budget, the list of SEL items, priorities, that cost is over $26 million. And so with the sort of top on the list are these advocacy centers, which is a trauma-informed restorative approach in elementary schools. And I think Councilmember Suara described it well, that we're about 17 using the funds proposed by the mayor, and in addition to some of those ESSER federal funds.
Mr. North, let me stop you. Your voice is not picking up on the broadcast. Can you come up here to the front? Not to put you on the spot. Yes.
Let's see if I'm on now. Am I on?
You are.
All right. So a couple of things. First of all, if I get some of this not quite right, I will get you more detail, or if you need more detail, I'll get it to you as soon as I can. So Councilmember Suara summarized it very well. There are initially in the aspirational budget on SEL, social emotional learning and integration with academics, the total cost of that list of needs is about $26.6 million. And the top priority of those are these advocacy centers, which is a trauma-informed restorative approach in elementary schools. Using the 2.5 additional funding for SEL that the mayor has proposed, and ESSER funds, that can fund these centers in all but 17 elementary schools. And so to provide one in each elementary school would take right at $1.2 million, an additional $1.2 million. And I think that was explained pretty well. I think I'm just repeating what Councilmember Suarez said.
So now we're on advocacy centers. Councilman Cash.
Thanks. I have a lot to say, so please stop me if I am taking more time than I should. I first want to say, I am in support of advocacy centers and social emotional learning. I am in support of these 7 days because there's an overlap there. But and let me say, if you don't know, if you haven't noticed, I love getting into MNPS and school policy and vision and quite qualified to do so. And I love getting into the nuts and bolts of education. But that's really, there's a part of me that thinks that's what the school board needs to do, and it's, I think that there sometimes are unintended consequences of us getting too deep into the nuts and bolts of this. I want to add, since we're talking about social emotional learning and advocacy centers, I have some hopes that I will share since we're getting into this. I really hope that schools themselves have input into how their advocacy centers operate and how their how social emotional learning, what it looks like in their school, and that not everything come down from the top, because we want this to be successful. And when schools have, and teachers and school leaders have flexibility in how they meet their mission and how they improve, they're going to feel more buy into it. So I really hope, and I gotta say that while I would be happy for every school to have advocacy centers or a specific position, I get nervous as a school person. I get nervous when MNPS has policy that says every school is going to get this position, because it means that there's a decision that's being taken away from the school. I want to add that, I think the success of this culture shift is going to come more than anything, not from us giving them $3 million more, but from the school leaders and how they set their mission and how they encourage their staff and faculty. That's gonna be more than anything how it succeeds. Now, I'm supportive of having tools, but I just think the more that we and council get into the nuts and bolts, it makes me a little nervous, even though I'm in support of all these things. And it kind of makes me, if we're debating this and we're saying we're going to give the school system this money for this specific purpose, it makes me want to ask for like a report later to see how's that money that we gave you for this specific thing, how'd that go? I'd like a survey that tells me how teachers feel about it, how families, how parents and students feel about a new initiative, and would love to see that, but I don't know if that's our place. I also want to ask, I kind of would like to suggest something here, and I don't know that this is this year, but the way I understand these advocacy centers, that we're moving away, and restorative practices, that we're moving away from punishment and more towards steering students in the right way and helping them manage their own behavior. Part of it is being cognizant of, part of social emotional learning is being cognizant of other things going on in student lives. But I would like to ask, so still on budget, MNPS spends $350,000 on ISS teachers. If advocacy centers and restorative practices are successful, would you consider getting rid of the ISS teachers? Is that like, I don't expect you to answer that right now, but to me, they seem to be at odds. And so I would, since we're getting into the nuts and bolts, I question whether we need both.
What is ISS?
I'm sorry, in-school suspension. It's where students, rather than being suspended and sent home, are suspended, but they stay in a room, I guess, in the school somewhere, away from their classes, but with somebody supervising them. Somebody, yeah, okay. Anyway, I think that's really what I wanted to say. And we'll just add, like what I said before, I think it is important that everybody in the school system be a part of this mission, this shift. And honestly, if we're giving additional monies over what we have, if there are amendments that we're going to look at, there's a part of me that would suggest, like, let's give every employee a little bit more money and say, hey, this is because we need you on board for these changes that we're going through, rather than, sometimes I worry that when there's a specialist in a school, that the rest of the school can sometimes, if they don't feel a part of the mission, the rest of the school can sometimes look at that specialist and say, oh, social emotional learning, that's their responsibility, right? They can take care of that. And that's why I bring up, it's important that everybody feel a part of this mission. And because this is about, improving relationships between teachers, employees, and students, and making them feel positive rather than punishing them for things that they do, sometimes because they're kids. Anyway, I've gone on for a long time, and I just wanted to share those things and really appreciate the time to do it. Like I said, I am in support of both of these things, but those are some things that concern me about it. Thanks.
Councilwoman Porterfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Cash. Just to touch on a few things, schools have autonomy with the programming, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Mr. North, and hopefully he could give us some more information, or MNPS could send us more information. Many schools have created safe spaces like within their building to help calm down students who are in crisis and who are experiencing trauma. And those schools have the autonomy to create those spaces based on the needs of their students, like, their. So I do think that, like, with applying this funding to make sure that we have those advocacy centers, I don't think that that's necessarily going to take away from the autonomy of how those schools operate. I'm 100% in support of removing ISS from our schools. There has been tons of research that shows that programs like ISS, out of school suspension, which is OSS, and ISS, which is in-school suspension, these programs disproportionately impact minority students, Black and brown students, and students from a lower socioeconomic status. So I'm 100% in support of removing that, but I also agree with you, we're not here to get into the nuts and bolts. That's what our school board is for. We're here to make sure that they have the appropriate funding to do what they need to do to make sure that our students are being successful. We hold our teachers to this really high standard, and there's a lot of complaints when we have students that are not reading on grade level, but we don't provide our schools with the level of funding to allow them to service our kids in the way that they need to be serviced. And there's a hierarchy of needs. You can't teach a child that's hungry. You can't teach a child that saw their daddy get arrested last night, or if their parent is in jail, or if ICE picked up a parent, or if they're, if we had a student that had seen his parent get killed the night before and was in school the next day. Like, you can't teach kids when they're in those crisis states like that. You have to meet their most secure needs first before we can ever worry about educating them. So I thank you for supporting this, Councilmember Cash, and I thank all of our colleagues for supporting this, because it's long overdue. And if we're going to move the needle academically with our students, then we have to make sure that we can only do that by supporting these emotional needs. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns on advocacy centers? Councilwoman Suara.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to everyone that spoke. I think you can see the passion of having a diversity of professions on the council. So the teachers and people in MNPS bringing that personal touch to the story. I told the story while I was running about my kid going to school in a certain part of Nashville, and then my last child going to school in North Nashville. And I told the story of when I was a principal for a day of a young man that came in. He was standing on the side. You can see that he was depressed. As the principal for a day, I didn't know what to do. So the real principal actually went and talked to him. This was at John Early. And after talking to him, the principal came back and told me that he was very self-conscious because he wasn't able to wash his uniform, and he had on dirty uniform. John Early has a closet with uniform, with sanitary towel, with a lot of things to support the kids. Oftentimes, we've also talk about it, different people talking about parents supporting kids and PTOs supporting kids. Not all of our schools have PTOs that can fund some of the needs of our children. And so I think it is incumbent on all of us to make sure that all of our schools have the resources to support all of our children. And like Councilmember Porterfield said, that if a child is already self-conscious, if a child is hungry, how do you teach such a child? And if you keep sending the child to ISS, why would they want to come to school again? Because the ISS is set up as punitive. And so we can go on and on about this. Programs have shown over and over that SEL actually help our children. It improves their self-confidence. It teaches them how to interact with other kids. And the effect of it is that academic performances also increases. Telling a child, how was your day? How are you doing? What did you eat? Is proven to show that kids actually do perform. And we cannot keep talking about it. We've talked about it long enough. And if MNPS is coming to us and saying, this is our aspirational goals, this is what we need to fund, this is where we need to go. So I went basic, and that's why I talked to Dr. Battle and said, what do we do with these advocacy centers? How can we have it in 57 schools when there's 72 needs? Well, what about all 55 schools keep getting my math mixed up, but it's 17 that are not funded. And so we need to make sure that all of our kids and all of our schools have access. I wish we could do more than elementary school. I would like for us to do something on the counselor or psychologist to student ratio in the middle school. But I ask all of you to, if you did not, listen to my budget conversation last week with MMPD budget chair, vice chair, and MNEA president, and they went into details about some of the social-emotional learning. This is a good start. It's not enough. If chair give us more, we have more money, we can do more. But at a minimum, let's make sure that this advocacy center is there at every school and that we're funding that. So with that, again, I humbly request that you all support this.
All right, any other questions, comments, concerns about the advocacy centers? And I think that was the last thing for MMPS. Thank you.
No, there is Pencil Foundation. It's on the list.
It is.
Do I get to talk about it?
Yes, but is that MMPS though? That's
well, I don't know why it's on the MMPS, but I think that even in the budget conversation on Saturday, one of the parents asked, you know, does any of this budget pay for school supplies? And the parents that are still struggling to buy supplies, and all of that still came into play. And so I give a plug to Pencil, because Pencil support MMPS so much by providing supplies for our teachers. And they have a store where teachers can actually go often and get the supplies that they need. And I think this organization is providing so much services that we need to fund it. I don't think we've ever funded it. And so I know we're probably going into an application process for non-for-profit, but I want to highlight Pencil, and I want to make sure that if we can do it directly, that would be my ask. If not, I hope Mr. Jamison and the administration are listening. Mr. North can speak to how Pencil support MMPS, that this is an organization that actually helps us do some of the things that our parents are struggling with, our teachers need help with, and it all goes into Mr. Cash thing about we all have to have this change and do it together.
Mm-hmm. And we, as a council, created that oversight committee the same as we did with the CARES Act funds. So I know that's not your preference, but that is an option that that the Pencil Foundation could go through that process.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. I hope you all heard why.
Just throwing it out there. Councilwoman Welch did have add school nurses and counselors, and that was $6,884,500. Mr. North, do you know anything about the school nurses and counselors and any need there? I know I specifically asked about, okay. All right, so we'll just wait to get additional details on that, and we can talk about it at the next session. Oh, thank you. So that is it. Thank you for coming out and answering our questions. Office of Family Safety. We did get that, the letter from the Office of Family Safety to add funds to distribute to nonprofits for counseling for children subjected to domestic abuse at home during the pandemic, and that was $1,060,000. And I know I've had some conversations with the administration. There may be some funds available to take care of that without going through the fiscal year 22 budget, and I can keep having those conversations. But I did get the impression that there was definitely an interest in addressing what appears to be a very urgent need. Moving on to parks. I think Councilwoman Benedict is taking hers off. Some of these sounded like CIB requests, and I'll ask Director Cooper to help me out on these. Councilman Druffel, add to grounds and maintenance for cleanup of Brookmead Park. Is that more of a CIB? Is that operating, Director Cooper?
It depends on whether it's to add personnel for that or if it's for actual. If it's just maintenance of existing facilities, that could be through the 4% fund. If it's substantial construction, then that would be capital.
Chair.
Councilman Druffel.
Yeah, thanks for your recognition. Can I address the homeless all at one time? I have three different.
Sure.
So part of it, we have a homeless encampment on Charlotte near the Lowe's. And I've been asking a fair amount of money here in combination, number one, we recognize after talking to Judy Tech, we need a housing first solution. In this particular encampment, I think it gives us a good example of some of the major issues. A neighbor just sent me a note last week that said, as he was driving by, a girl was running out of the homeless encampment. A guy literally tackled her, started beating her up right in front of everybody. So he kept honking. People honked. They could not stop him, but eventually pulled her back in and went back in the encampment. So I think the level of violence in this particular encampment that's been around for 12 years is pretty significant. And we have been addressing it on the side, on the peripheral, but I think we need to hit it a little bit harder and straight on. So I'm asking for not only money to clean up, but money for a housing first solution. This amount of money is probably based on about 150 homeless to get them into a housing first solution. There's about 40 to 50 at this particular encampment. But we know that some of these encampments are getting extremely violent. We have people doing drugs and sex acts right there in the public. They are starting to come into our neighborhood, where literally we found a couple behind a home where there's a 3- and 5-year-old playing in the backyard, and they're 10 feet away. We just know that this is becoming a pretty sensitive issue in our neighborhood, and in this particular encampment, we have to do something more serious and intentional to get a solution. So I'm asking money for this, not showing the source, but the reality is we need to start making an inroad here a little bit more at a higher pace to do and handle some of these homeless encampments. And that's what I'm asking for.
So Councilman Rosenberg also had a request to add 2 FTEs for under-resourced homeless impact division of provision of homeless services. For the $3 million ask that you have for the housing solutions, is there an itemization of what that $3 million is for, or is that just a bucket of money to address homelessness?
That's a bucket of money to provide housing for that. And really, we do need a housing first solution. It absolutely makes sense, as I've spent a year talking to Judy Tackett and spending some time, because the people in these encampments don't have a chance if they don't have a place where there's resources. We allow them to stay in the encampment and get entrenched, such as this one. The violence, and if you understand what happens in those, there's just no chance for them to get out of where they're going. So this is for that. It's a rapid housing solutions in a different combination, but it's providing the opportunity in a serious way to provide housing so that they can get out of it.
Councilwoman Henderson.
Thank you very much. I appreciate Councilman Druffle's efforts and intention in this space. I know, some of this is a capital request rather than operational, and so I just wondered if, in his conversations with Ms. Tackett, if Councilman Druffle, to your point, Chair Toombs, has an idea about like the number of positions needed. As I understood in engaging with Ms. Tackett this past year, I believe they had more folks to be able to kind of go on the ground and engage these communities. I have a few places in the Bellevue part of my district where we have kind of some hilltop, smaller encampments. And I had understood, comparative to previous years, that there was some COVID funding that was being put towards this space. Okay, and Councilor Johnson is saying $10 million in that particular space. And so I appreciate it, and I think the extra staffing was imperative in this year especially, and to your point, it will be ongoing. So I think I would like to understand how the COVID funding is coming to bear in this moment, right? But I don't want that funding to then go away and we're back to where we just had 2 or 3 people in that division, because I think we all remember, those of us returning from previous term, it was very difficult to respond to constituent and community concerns to get somebody to go out to this encampment. For me, especially some of the smaller ones that were maybe less acute or violent, but they would go out there wouldn't be anybody there at that time. They would offer services, they would have to go back. It's somewhat labor intensive from an FTE standpoint, and I think it's just a kind of pervasive or ongoing concern. We need to make sure that Ms. Tackett's division is staffed appropriately. So I don't know, kind of the carryover of the COVID dollars versus, could we get through this operational budget cycle with grant funds and then maybe be kind of proactively looking ahead to next year when those are going to wane. I don't know if they're, respectfully, I don't know if they're needed this year or how the COVID kind of comes to, dollars come to bear. Thank you.
Councilwoman Johnston?
Thanks. There is a need for additional FTEs in social services for this, the homeless outreach across the board. I will say that when we're talking about the $10 million that came from the CARES Act for this specific need, in my opinion, if you are going to use one-time dollars for something, it needs to be for a one-time expense, and FTEs are not a one-time expense, it's ongoing. And so if we're gonna use that $10 million, it would be my preference for it to be a capital expenditure, so that we create an asset from those dollars that we will be continue to be able to use year after year after year, versus using $10 million for temporary housing or for FTEs that, with however long that lasts, and then we're out of those dollars. So that let's just be mindful that that $10 million that we're speaking of is one time. That's all.
Councilman Druffel?
Yeah, just a couple quick notes. Some of the staffing they use are really through nonprofits. Yes, Judy, who goes out to these and where do they get their information? They actually use nonprofits, which are fantastic. I mean, they do a great service, but we don't have our own people. And that's, as we're just talking about it, is a major thing. And to talk about the $3 million, for example, I think that could be a combination somewhat of permanent housing or temporary vouchers or whatever we need to accelerate providing the opportunity. The ideal situation, I've gotten a chance to talk, is finding that specific spot where we can control it for a long period of time and we provide services. So, unused land, there's, these mini houses, there's all kinds of different models out there. And those different models provide opportunities, but we need to get the money to get started. And I think we'd have to determine from after the money, what's the best scenarios from that. So, thank you.
Councilwoman Suara?
Thank you, Chair. I want to speak specifically to the $3 million because I do think that even adding the FTEs, I do support that as well, but having people go out, talking to people is not going to solve the problem because we're still not having a place to put folks. And I don't want to look at it from the angle of the crimes and what's taking place. I want to look at it from the fact that these are our residents as well, our citizens, and we do need to make sure that that's taken care of. There's a lot of our students, believe it or not, that are homeless. And so we're still talking about this social, emotional, and everything that kids have to go through. Making sure people are housed is a priority. I know this is not an operating budget item, but I think it's important for us to, whether it's the CARES Act funding, or in the CIB, whatever we need to do. Ms. Tackett did a presentation on the $10 million to the Affordable Housing Committee a while back, and it includes a whole bunch of different things, but it's not enough. Housing is a major thing here, but housing for our own house is even a major need. And so I fully support this concept of how do we put more money in having homes so that we can actually get our citizens off the street. Thank you.
Councilwoman Porterfield?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilwoman Sora said almost everything that I was intending to say standing up. I think that it's imperative that we put resources into supporting our unhoused residents and making sure that they do have housing. I don't want to see any money coming from the Parks Department to do this. I think we need to look for creative ways to make sure that we find the funding. My understanding that the COVID dollars that went to the rapid rehousing of individuals that were experiencing homelessness was, running very successfully. We know that there were some issues with the flood that came through, but, we have to make sure that we are having actual housing for people to go so that individuals are not having to stay on the street. are having to camp. And I think that Councilmember Sora hit the nail on the head. We want to make sure that people have a place that they can lay their head with dignity. And it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we're supporting those initiatives. Thank you, Chair.
Any additional questions, comments, or concerns? Councilwoman Sepulveda.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to touch on the rapid rehousing for just a minute. Now that it's been brought up, there are several districts who are participating in the rapid rehousing. And speaking to one of those property owners in my district, she has told me stories about how providing housing for a lot of these people who have been experiencing homelessness for a long time has completely changed their way of life. Many of them have been able to find jobs and been able to move on to different housing. And so I do think that we need to prioritize housing for this community. And we do need to look at affordable housing. That is something that we heard over and over again at Tuesday's meeting. And so I just wanted to let you all know that from my experience working with some of these property owners that are participating in the program, it has been something that they have found very successful and rewarding to participate.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns? All right, moving down the list, Councilwoman Johnston, you're back up. Under parks, the additional FTEs.
Okay, so I hope I'm preaching to the choir on the importance of our parks for a multitude of reasons. So quality of life for the people that live here, for the people that are visiting here, and how important it is to maintain them. And so when we were looking at the budget during the budget hearings, it was a little shocking just understanding how we are sort of struggling to maintain. We've got so many parks, so many acres, hundreds and hundreds of acres of parks, and so many miles of greenways. And so I dug in and said, what would really be a significant and impactful addition to really help? And so I knew it was going to be a lot more than she was originally asking for, but I was a little bit shocked to see what she really needed. And you all got that email back a couple of weeks ago, but it's a total of 129.24 FTEs, which equates to 166 head count. And that differential is because Parks has a lot of part-time and seasonal employees with summertime, with splash parks and this, that, and the other. So obviously 129 FTEs was significant and probably not doable. And so I had several conversations with people that are in that space to try to pare that down. And so that is what I did. So that's how I came up with and I'm going to my phone because I failed to print this out. But so what I came up with was 63.39 FTEs. And did y'all see the breakdown of that? I probably need to email that to you to show, how many was in maintenance, how many were in golf or expanded the sportsplex positions, this, that, and the other. But I just want, it's so important that we start taking care of these parks. We are constantly adding to parks. So, for example, in my district, Metro Water is aggressively going after properties that are repetitive losses from floods. And so what happens is we purchase those homes with a variety of dollars coming from a variety of places, but we demolish the house and it becomes green space, and then Parks then has to add that to their list of things that they maintain. It's increasingly difficult to do their jobs where we're not just talking about mowing the lawns. We're talking about a lot of times picking up feces and drug needles and things like that from our spaces that we should be able to easily and safely enjoy. And so when we're talking about allocating dollars and we're in this really important space where our time period in our city where we're rebuilding, we do have the funds now. It's like, where do we spend the money? It was hard for people to hear a year ago that we needed more money and had to raise taxes. It's hard now to hear that, well, our departments are underfunded, and our departments are underfunded, and parks is one of the main ones. And so I would love to see this happen for our parks division, just because we all enjoy these parks, greenways, whatever it is. And so do the people that visit here. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer, but, and I'm happy to email exactly what I came up with when I pared down from the 129 down to the 60 something that I came up with. And then additionally was the fleet needs. It's like, well, if we have more people, we need trucks and this, that, and the other. They in the past have used 4% funds, and so that may be something on the capital budget or the CIB. But I did ask Director Odom if we can't do vehicles, is it still appropriate to hire people if we don't have a truck for them, or, you know, and she said they could obviously, they would be able to make it work. And so that's another reason why I chose the different FTEs in these different positions, and understanding that we may not be able to get those capital needs for them, obviously, since we're talking about operating. So.
And you're right, Councilwoman Johnston, the vehicle needs would come out of the 4% fund. So that wouldn't be an item that would go in the operating budget. Any comments, questions, concerns, Councilwoman Suara?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be very brief. I just want all of us to remember what we went through this year and how people have to stay home. Some of us are blessed to have bigger properties and some of us do not. And so when you have a large family members staying in a 2-3 bedroom with a little space, not being able to interact, go out, the parks and the open spaces, what's kept a lot of people going in the past year, and being able to have access to those common areas is good for our quality of life and our sanity. And so with that, I do support additional funding for the parks. Thank you.
And Councilwoman Johnston, does this include Fringe, that $3.1 million?
Yes, ma'am, it does.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns? All right, we'll move on to Minority Caucus at Recreation Centers program funding. Councilwoman Suara.
Thank you, Chair. This came up also during the budget hearings and looking at the details of the operations for the park department. In listening to them, some of the reason why they're cutting basically are not able to fund everything at 100% is because some of this used to come from the special revenue. And with COVID, that special revenue went down. As I was looking at those information, I noticed that there was $125,000 that was funded last year for Recreation Centers program that was not in this year's operating budget. It came from special operations, special revenue last year. And my take is that if that revenue did go down, Recreation Center program is not what we should be cutting. We should be able to make up that 125 from the general fund. And so that is what this ask is to be able to ensure that the Recreation Center stays open. Now that everybody are out and going about, I think those recreation centers are very important. And for that 125, I would love to see them open. And they're open. They're not closed, so I don't want to misspoke. So we're doing grammar and everything today.
Have you had a conversation with Director Odom to
I
see?
did. Yes, I did.
Would they be cutting actual programs or?
The centers are open. Let me put it like that. That's the way she said it. She said they're trying to do everything that they can with what they have. So that's why I said the centers are not being closed. Right. But this is a funding that is no longer there. And my take is that where would that program go? And so that was the essence of that.
So my question is, so if there are there any current programs that they're going to cut because of the reduction of the 125,000, or is it that she's saying the programs will continue. They'll just, I guess, adapt to having fewer resources.
That's what they would do, adapt.
Okay.
And so she said they're going to do everything they can to make sure that things continue, but they just have to work with less. And I'm saying for 125,000, every time we're looking at places to cut, for me, anything that has to do with the children, the community with education is not where we should go. We need children and families to have more to do, not less. And 125,000 is a worthy investment for them to continue doing what they're doing, or even maybe even add to it. And so that's.
Okay. Councilwoman Porterfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was also one of my budget wish list items. We hear a lot about public safety and people wanting to feel safe in their communities. And one concern that often comes up is that children many times don't have access to after-school programs and some of the things that they, may have previously had when we were growing up. They don't always have as much access to these programs. So by increasing funding to the recreational centers, we're providing more support for children in our communities and making sure that they have a safe space to go after schools, to making sure that they have educational opportunities, social opportunities, as well as health opportunities. Kids go to those centers and play basketball. At our community center in my district, we have a swimming pool, and you have kids who, may not have access to activities like swimming otherwise. So by making sure that we're supporting these community centers, we are giving children the opportunity to have a safe place to go, and we're giving them the opportunity to be off, not necessarily just out. A lot of times we have parents that are working. Many parents are having to work 2 and 3 jobs, and that leaves children unsupervised. So this gives an opportunity for our kids to be in a safe space. And I just ask our colleagues to please support this. Thank you.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns about the Recreation Center program funding? All right, moving along, Public Works. Councilwoman Allen had on her wish list to add 5 additional FTEs for inspectors to supervise installation of fiber infrastructure in the right-of-way, and that was for $375,000. I'm sorry, did I skip you? I surely did. I'm sorry. Councilman Rutherford, you had the ad park upgrades. That's really long. I'll let you read it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this is ad park upgrades to include providing internet service and security cameras to Cane Ridge Community Club, which is located at Crawford Park, reinforcing the bridge with sound mitigation on the Mill Creek Greenway near Hidden Creek neighborhood, and updating the basketball courts at Pitts Park, which is actually in Councilmember Nash's district, but is used by a number of constituents from 3 or 4 districts in the area. Basically, what we're looking to do with this is to create a small fund that would take care of some of the smaller parks and the items that they need. Nashville is blessed with a lot of great parks and greenways, but some of our smaller ones tend to not get the attention that some of the bigger ones do. And the larger ones also have friends groups that take care of a lot of these smaller dollar items, if you will. The small parks either do not have a friends group, or if they do have a friends group, they don't have the resources that the larger ones do, and tend to be more of cleanup groups, which is great, and that's important and a great need as well. But I'd like to see some of these smaller items addressed in our smaller parks.
And Director Cooper, is this more CIB or 4% fund than operating, or the general operating budget?
As far as installing the cameras and that kind of stuff, that would all be 4%. Bridge reinforcement, is that the one we're on, right?
Yes.
The bridge reinforcements would be capital, probably from a capital spending plan. Yeah, so none of it would be operating.
Well, would that be considered maintenance? It's an existing bridge, actually a fairly new bridge that just had some issues with its
yeah,
construction.
if it's just maintenance and not substantial construction, then it could be 4% funds, which is out of the operating budget, but is more of a capital type expense.
Okay, and that's more of what we're talking.
Any questions, comments, concerns on Councilman Rutherford's proposal? All right, we'll keep rolling. Under Public Works, to add the 5 additional FTEs for to supervise the installation of fiber infrastructure in the right-of-way, I reached out to Director Whitelaw with Public Works, and she was not sure of how many FTEs would be appropriate. And I know part of the funding suggestion was to increase fees to cover the cost of those FTEs. And she also, Director Whitelaw, didn't know how much she would need to increase the fees by. And so her suggestion was to get funding for a fee study. And so that's between $100,000 to $150,000. And so I added that to my list for them to do a fee study to figure out how they would go about addressing this issue. Any comments, questions, concerns about that? All right. Add 1 FTE for customer service representative East Convenience Center to ensure adequate staffing and reduce reliance on contractors. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilwoman Henderson?
Thank you, Chair Toombs. I did have a comment particular to right-of-way inspection. And so I concur with Council Lady Allen, and through some discussions in Public Works Committee, I'm trying to kind of look back at my notes in the Public Works budget hearing, because I know we had asked very particularly to make sure that we were having more inspectors for right-of-way just generally, because, you know, it's compounded by, you know, all the 5G and digital installation. And so I do support the fee study. And I guess what I would say is just if we can make sure, and I'm going to look back at my notes, I remember kind of feeling like generally the additional positions as proposed in the Public Works budget might be coming up a bit short on just kind of baseline right-of-way maintenance. And so I guess just adding maybe a little nuance to Council Lady Allen's request, I don't know, I'm not disputing that 5 are needed specifically to fiber installation, but I would like us maybe to think about it more generally for right-of-way inspection. And I apologize that I'm needing to kind of triangulate, I think, on some notes, but I would just ask that we make sure. I would say, you know, we may need 2 or 3 more in right-of-way inspection, just from a baseline standpoint of everyday stuff. And so it might kind of be a combination thing, like some are needed. And then the other position, Chair Toombs, that we had asked about in Public Works Committee, outside of the budget hearing, but relatedly, and I believe, again, needing to kind of look back at my notes, but Ms. DeMassimo indicating in that Public Works budget hearing or acknowledging the need for a position that is a kind of utility coordinator. There needs to be a person in Public Works that is managing this space. And so, again, to add nuance to this request, it might not be 5 inspectors particular to this, but also it might be a person to kind of manage that effort, plus some baseline right-of-way maintenance, maybe plus 2 for utility specific. So I will do my best to kind of pull my notes together on that, but I would invite you maybe to touch base with Chair Nash, or I'll send it to Mr. Cooper to forward. So again, whether it's, you know, 3, 4, or 5, and what the title of that is, and what rate that those employees might be at, I generally want to say I support more staffing for right-of-way inspection, and then just kind of, you know, not sure if they, maybe all 5 need to be specifically for fiber installation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And just, it is 6:56 now. I wanted to have a I was hoping for 7, but we can go to 7:30 if folks are okay with that. Have a hard stop at 7:30. I think most of the stuff that's left over is duplicative, so we should be able to get through it tonight. Councilwoman Porterfield?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had 2 items under parks that were skipped. Is it okay to address them now?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. One of those items was $763,500 to add funding for our community centers. We received a document from the Parks Department that outlined some of the things that they were needing. This request would allow positions so that community centers can increase the quality of youth programs as well as improve the business operations. That is, I believe that's for 19 positions. I won't go into the need as to why we need it because I just kind of spoke on why we needed to increase funding for our community centers, but I wanted to make sure that we didn't skip over that one. And then the other one was for $104,900, and that's an expansion of the disabilities program. The disabilities program is a program that Metro Parks currently offers for individuals with intellectual disabilities as well as physical disabilities. And you can get more information on the Metro website, but basically they have adult day programs for adults that are 22 and for intellectual and developmental disabilities, where they do like arts and crafts, sports training, exercise, karaoke, drama. So it provides, social skills for individuals with disabilities. It provides them some form of respite so that they're able to connect with other individuals. They also have performing arts community day, Best Buddies programs, which are programs that typically will partner an individual with disabilities with a neurotypical individual or and kind of foster a friendship there and give opportunities for them to have these like one-on-one friendships. And they also have young adult summer programs for individuals that are 18 to 21 that are day programs that run through the months of June and July. So by adding this additional $100,000, almost $105,000, this would allow that program to expand to multiple locations.
All right, any questions, comments, concerns about the 2 proposals from Councilwoman Porterfield? Councilwoman Porterfield, I think you also had this next one on your list, the FTE for the customer service rep at the East Convenience Center.
Yes, ma'am, I did have that one, and I'll just talk really briefly. We did receive information that, if I remember correctly, I think this position is being contracted out at a higher rate. So by us offering the FTE position, we would be able to have some cost savings by hiring out a person as opposed to contracting out someone.
Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns about that proposal? All right, Councilwoman Stiles, you have 2. Add $100,000 for trash cans on main thoroughfares and add $50,000 for historical markers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think we have talked about it often. We have a growing trash problem all over the city, not just downtown. And what we need and are often missing outside of downtown are trash cans along our main roads. So for me in the southeast, that's Bell Road, that could be Murfreesboro Road, Nolensville Road. In speaking with Public Works, they said to add trash cans across the city on these main roads, it would be $100,000. And these are roads that the trash trucks are already going down. So it's not, they would be going out of their way. But I think we definitely need to consider it. In terms of historical markers, previously that program had been fully funded in the last term, and now they are down to less than 10 markers a year, and we have significant history that has not been acknowledged. So this $50,000 will go to being able to honor more of our history across the board culturally.
Questions, comments, or concerns about Councilwoman Stiles' proposals? I'm told that these would also fall under the 4% fund. Councilwoman Swar, and then I'm coming to you, Councilwoman Porterfield.
I support council members' effort, Styles' effort to keep Nashville clean, and she's done a lot of cleanup in the neighborhood. My only concern with this trash can is that some of these roads are state roads, and I think the state should be paying for some of this. That's my only. If there are roads are street, then I can get that. But some of these are not city maintained roads, and so if they're not ours, then let's get the state, maybe work with the state to get some money from them to clear them. So that's my only reservation with some of them.
Councilwoman Porterfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was pretty much what I was going to say. I would also like to add that if we can get the state to pay for those funding, to pay for that funding, I would love to see these trash cans on local roads that we maintain ourselves, because we do have a significant trash problem. And I also want to stand in support for the historic markers. Nashville today is not the Nashville that we saw 10, 20, 30, or 50 years ago. And as we continue to experience a new Nashville, or experience gentrification and all the things that we're seeing happening in our communities, we are losing so much of the fabric of Nashville and losing a lot of our history. So supporting those historic markers, so that we continue to honor and commemorate, and in addition to saving some of those buildings that we've discussed before trying to save, but having those historic markers will be important so that we're not losing everything. Thank you.
Councilwoman Sepulveda.
Thank you, Chair, and I concur with my colleagues. I think the state should do its job and help us out when it comes to their roads. I do want to speak on the historical markers. Councilwoman Porterfield is right that the Nashville today isn't the Nashville that many people knew before in the past, and we have such a diverse community, and there are several instances in which we could acknowledge the historical contribution that a lot of these minority groups have contributed to our city. I know before the pandemic I was talking to them about having a historical marker for the Kurdish community, and that's something that Councilwoman Suara was also going to participate in. And so I agree that we need to see some funding go to the historical markers, because one thing I keep talking about is making sure that our children know their history. And it's a hard place to be in when their history isn't taught the way it should be in schools. And if they could see that someone in their community contributed in a certain way to this city, I think that will speak volumes, and that does make a difference. And I don't think people know how much of a difference that could actually make. So I am in support of more money for historical markers.
Councilwoman Styles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may address Council Members Porterfield, Suara, and Sepulveda?
Sure.
So thank you all very much. You're my favorite people to disagree with. And I would like to say that in dealing with TDOT on this matter, it has been difficult because I've been working on trying to get trash pickup just even when they're coming through to do mowing, and it has been exhaustive. And knowing that Public Works is willing to step up for now, I would love for us to get started, and perhaps I can continue working on a relationship with TDOT because I'm very close to getting that first trash pickup. But it's going to take a lot to make it countywide. So this would be a good first step, and then TDOT can come in and follow up. Okay? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any additional comments, questions, or concerns on Councilwoman Styles' proposals? All right, we have already done the social services proposals. I'm not forgetting anything. Councilwoman Porterfield, am I?
No, you've already got them all, Madam Chair.
Okay. Moving on to nonprofits. Councilwoman Suara. So I believe most of these proposals are from the Minority Caucus and you.
Yes, ma'am. The first one on that list is $1 million for Gideon's Army. We all heard a lot on Tuesday at our meeting. Before then, Gideon Zami made a presentation to the Minority Caucus on the impact of the work they're doing in the community. And we strongly believe that we want us to be able to fund part of the work that Gideon Zami is doing in our community. I don't want to repeat everything that we've said today. We need to start looking for different solutions. We need to try doing a lot of different things. And we need to start offering our children a lot of way out. And Gideon Zami has been doing a lot of work in the North Nashville corridor. But I think that it's been very impactful. You hear the stories of some of the kids that they've worked with and even individuals. And so the Minority Caucus feels very strongly that this is a program that we want to support, and we ask the council to also support by allocating $1 million to Gideon Zami to continue to do the work that they do in the community.
Any, Councilwoman Porterfield?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to stand in support. Sometimes there's controversy about whether or not it's the job of the government to fund nonprofits, and people have different views on whether or not we should allocate taxpayer dollars to do that. One thing that I think has just kind of been a guiding light when we consider that is, are we able to experience cost savings when we are investing in our nonprofits? Meaning, are we able to partner with nonprofits to get jobs done that we as a city are not able to do? And I think that this is one of those instances. By investing in programs like violence interruption, what we see and what we will see is a return on that investment. We'll see, what we hope to see is less crime happening in our communities. What we hope to see is more opportunities for individuals that are in marginalized communities. And when we're able to have an impact in that way, when we're able to see less crime in the community, we see savings further down the line. So when we're looking at reduction of, let's say, a police budget, when we're looking at that, we have the data to support these programs being effective and efficient, so then we're able to have savings in other departments. So it's, similar to what we talked about with those social emotional learning programs. Like if you make these investments on the front end, what we see are substantial savings on the back end, not just financially, but savings in the community as well. So I just ask my colleagues to help support, and that they will support this initiative. Thank you, Chair.
And if I may add that we all know that Gideon Zami is not new, and so this is an organization that have demonstrated what they do in the community, and so you do have something to fall back on in terms of what they've been able to do and what they've been able to add to the community. And so, again, I'm urging everyone, our colleagues, to consider supporting this as well.
Councilwoman Sepulveda?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to talk in support of the $1 million towards Gideon's Army. We had the organization come and speak to us at the last Minority Caucus meeting, and one thing that they talked about that really stood out to me, one thing they said was, we've been doing the same thing for a long time. Let's do something different. And I heard that, and when they came and spoke to us on Tuesday, I think it was very powerful hearing the firsthand experience that many of them have had in our school systems and in our neighborhoods and with children. And I think that having such a group who has been working in North Nashville for a while, I think being able to put in a little bit from our metro government saying, hey, this is important to us too, and our community in North Nashville, even though I'm from Southeast Nashville, our community in North Nashville, we see you, and we want to make sure that we are also participating in helping resolve some of the inequities that we have seen there. So I would encourage my colleagues to also support the $1 million towards Gideon's Army.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? This is also an item that I support as the chair, so hopefully 20 other colleagues will also support it when it comes time to vote. Next, I have on the list, I have the NBC Leo.
So NBC Leo is coming to Nashville for the conference. This is the Black Caucus of the National League of Cities conferences that we go. I think majority of our colleagues has been to some of the ones that they've had in other cities. And so what's unique about this one is that they're bringing that conference to Nashville. And it's also so important to note that the current chair of the Minority Caucus, Councilmember Hurd, is the incoming president of NBC Leo. And so this is a way for us to be able to support that initiative. It brings the high of the legislative world, our colleagues, other elected officials around the country will be in Nashville, and we want to be able to support that initiative. And so they are requesting through the incoming chair, the chair-elect or president-elect, who is also our current president of the Minority Caucus, to support this effort while the conference is taking place in Nashville.
And I know that in speaking with some folks in the administration, there may be some funds available for something like this.
Oh, good.
So it may be something that doesn't need to come out of the operating budget. I think there may be another pot of money that it can come out of.
I think we don't care which pot it comes out of. As long as it comes out, I think we'll be fine. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions, comments, concerns? All right, moving on. Next, I have NCEC.
Subsequent to submitting this, the NCEC is the Commission on Education. And last year, it was not in the budget, and the council voted to put it back in. I've subsequently heard that the NCEC is now a non-for-profit organization, and they will have to go through the funding process that other non-for-profits are doing. But I do hope they get funded. This is a commission agency that actually help people to learn skills in the community, skills that can help them get newer job or even just improve their quality of life, things to do. It serves a lot of adult populations in our community, and I hope that they stay in existence and continue to offer those programs. So with that, if there is another way to fund them through the non-for-profit process, then it really does not have to come through the budget, then I'll be okay with that.
Okay. The affordable housing development fees offset?
Yes, ma'am. So the affordable housing fee offset happened a couple of months back. One of the developers reached out to me about the fact that the increased water rate is actually having a negative impact on affordable housing, and their rate goes up too, and they're having to. We give them money in Banks Fund to help with affordable housing, but then we take it away from them through us charging them different kind of bills. So this is during the development phase of constructing affordable housing. I reach out to Mr. Porter and to look at maybe we can charge them a different rate. Mr. Cooper is privy to this conversation as well. Whether we can charge a different rate, find a way to be able to help them out. Mr. Porter came back and said the state would not allow us to have different rates for different organizations. But what we can do instead is have a way to reimburse, minimize, help with some of these construction costs so that it reduces the burden on them. And this money are coming to Metro, and so this is the part that it will be similar to us saying during the flood, let's waive permit fees, let's waive that fees. It's something like that. The difference is that the money was supposed to go to Metro Water, and so we have to have a way to put it in Metro Water. We could not just waive it and say don't pay it. And so because of the different funding source, Water has to get the money, and that's why it's set aside in the operating budget to be able to move that around or elevate that. And so it's not a lot of money, but it's something that would help. Again, we've talked about affordable housing so much. I don't think we have enough money in affordable housing. Everybody knows where I stand and what's going on with affordable housing in this city. Developers that build affordable housing are not making money. It's not a lucrative business for them. They're doing it so that we can have it. And so for us to now be nickeling and diming them on the fees that we charging them, I think it's not fair, and I think the $250 is just a reasonable amount to set aside for that.
So would the $250 be like a reserve that Water has to offset fees? Like how would it work logistically?
I believe that Mr. Cooper, you live in, whoever's replacing Mr. Cooper, the housing department and Water, we can all work this out, but that was a suggestion. And I'll let you chime in, Mr. Cooper. That was a suggestion that Water had, and the how it all worked, Mr. Cooper can tell us.
I think it could be an appropriation directly to water in the budget for that purpose. I'm not aware of doing anything like that before, but I think we could probably figure out the accounting.
Okay. Thank you. Any comments, questions, concerns? All right, hearing none. Add to small chambers.
I know what you're going to tell me. Go through the non-for-profit, but again, this is me highlighting non-for-profits that we've once funded before. I know that the Chamber of Commerce, the main Chamber of Commerce, is in the budget, but the smaller chambers, the Black Chamber, the LGBTQ Chamber, and the Hispanic Chamber are not. And so I would love for us to be able to put them back. They pick up the slack in some of them. I mean, we're talking economic development, we're talking about businesses in our community, and these chambers do provide value. So if we're keeping the Black Chamber in the budget, I would love for us to keep this $75,000 also in the budget.
And I think with the Nashville Chamber of Commerce, it's that's more of a contractual relationship, right?
Yes, yes.
So they're providing a service to the city in exchange for the money that they get.
I will argue that without a contractual obligation, this Chamber of Commerce are providing services as well. And so as a small business owner, I mean, I'm not against the subsidy for the chamber. Let's keep it. It's well earned. I'm saying that these chambers do equal work as well.
Councilwoman Sepulveda.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to, I just want to make sure that if we're going to do this, if we could also add the Tennessee Latin American Chamber of Commerce. There's two Chamber of Commerce for the Hispanic community here, and I don't want to get in trouble with them later on, so I just want to make sure to mention them as well if we're going to do it this way. But I understand what Councilwoman Suara is saying, and I agree that I would like to see possibilities of having contracts with some of these smaller chambers. Thank you.
Director Cooper, what does the Nashville Chamber do for us for that, the money that we have in the budget for them? What does everybody look like? Don't they? Okay.
I'm sorry. Our understanding is finance has been managing that relationship the last year. I don't have a whole lot of documentation. During this period, while we were waiting for Courtney Pogue, our new economic development director, to come in. But I do believe we had some materials that were provided by the chamber in advance of their budget hearing. And if those need to be recirculated, perhaps we can figure out how to get those back out to you.
I guess what I was really getting at was what was the difference between the Nashville Chamber and these other chambers? Like if there was a different relationship with the city, because as Councilwoman Suara pointed out, they are in the budget, but these other chambers are not.
Sure. I'm going to invite Diego also to speak a little bit to this, because my understanding is for the Nashville Chamber, we often use them for economic development consulting, for finance studies, for actual data purposes. And so there's some value. Again, I'd look to finance to speak to that a little bit further. But for the smaller chambers, my understanding is a lot of those were brought on as we started to think about diversity around procurement. And we had feedback from many of them that the approach that was being taken, we actually had 2 of the 4 had asked us not to do direct appropriations, had declined them last year. And then the other 2 had asked for a different approach in the future. So Diego can speak to that.
Yeah, I would just add that the main difference is in the scope and the objectives that we've set for each one of those contracts. So yeah, like Kristen mentioned, one is more consulting based and the other ones were more to attract and train minority businesses on how to transact with our procurement processes. And yeah, to reiterate that, I personally spoke with a few of them, and they brought up that the scope in which they've been working on as of right now is not necessarily, well, it hasn't been that fruitful, right? So in There's 2 of them that declined because of process issues, and then there's even another one of them with a little bit of issues right now with the audit requirements that we have for contracts those are the same for everybody. So one of them actually was part of the inspiration for how to reassess how we're addressing nonprofits. So I'm more than happy to provide more details for each one of those specifically.
Okay, I think that's interesting. I owned my CPA firm for a number of years, and I was a member of the Chamber of Commerce where I was for a number of years. And the Chamber does add value to a small business owner in so many ways. And so I see the value of the relationship of the Chamber with the business community, both the large one and the smaller one. And so if we're talking data and engagement with the larger one, I'm sure the smaller one can provide that data for the smaller and the minority community as well. And so that was going to be my argument. But if they're coming back and say we don't need the money, well, then we can put it to the schools. Thank you.
All right, and there was one from Councilman Sledge about adding money to the Venture Science Center. I think that also falls under nonprofits. And there's one on here from Councilman O'Connell, but I think that's something he's worked out with the administration. That's something that I think we actually have to do. Am I right about that, Director Cooper? Okay. Okay. Councilwoman Porterfield, I know there were some things you had that weren't on here. Oh, and Councilwoman Gamble, I'll go to you first. I think you may have raised your hand first. Hold on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, before we get off of nonprofits, I wanted to comment on something on the list from Councilmember Hurt, support for FISC, community support for FISC, and I just want to speak in support of that. The request is for $500,000, and I know that's quite a bit, and I'm not sure if we can support at that level, but some community support in support of FISC Social Justice Institute, the FISC Chapel, and of course the Jubilee Singers, which have been an asset to Nashville, and with FISC, which is my alma mater. All full disclosure here, I'm an alum and contribute to the university on a regular basis. But the private university is a major asset to the community. With those 3 entities that I spoke about specifically, and I would hope that we would consider supporting them in some way. Also, what's not on here that is a wish list of mine that is not on this list is the supporting the county clerk's office with 2 full-time positions. The county clerk did request in the budget for additional funds to increase the salaries for clerks so that they can become more competitive. They are losing and not able to recruit and retain good staff because of the pay that is lower than most of our government agencies, and they do a lot of work. I mean, they provide our vehicle registration, our license plate tags, marriage licenses. Whenever I go to their office, there's a line, and they really do need. These 2 positions were cut last year as a part of the budget cuts, and they really do need reinstatement of those 2 positions, which would cost about $122,000. So if we could add that, I'd like to publicly add that to this list in support of the county clerk's office. Thank you.
Any comments, questions, concerns about the proposals talked about by Councilwoman Gamble? Councilwoman Porterfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You caught one of them. I wanted to make sure that we acknowledged Councilmember Sledge's and Councilmember O'Connell's requests that were in the budget. I couldn't hear part of, I apologize, when you were speaking on the mic, it was going really low. I missed what was said about the smaller chambers, about the audit. I did hear that some of them declined the allotment, but I didn't hear what you said about the audit process. Could you repeat that, please?
Yes, of course. So one of them was having trouble with having it was an issue with their calendar year versus fiscal year, and they had an audit that was sufficient for last year's, for FY20's grant. Now, they wanted to, I guess, a waiver, if you will, for being able to use that same audit for FY21, but because of our rules in Metro, that was not, it's not allowed. So their issue was to have an audit that would cost X for a grant that only provides X plus, and they didn't know if that was worth their time and effort.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you for giving that clarification. I think that that may be a process that we need to look at. I think if we are giving money to entities and nonprofits, we want to make sure that we're being, fiscally responsible and holding people accountable. So I definitely understand the need for the audit process, but we also need to consider maybe, some of the smaller nonprofits or entities that we may be trying to help support and making sure that they have the infrastructure to be able to qualify for these things. So we don't want entities to not qualify because they don't have, a level of support or maybe a certain amount of money already.
So, Council Lady, just to follow up on that, the audit requirement is actually a state law requirement. It does not define what audit is in the state law. So some years ago, Metro added a definition for audit, which requires a certified financial audit. I met with John Bunton in the mayor's office last week about possibly coming up with some legislation to relax that a bit for certain levels of nonprofits. And so that discussion is ongoing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We just want to make sure that we're removing any barriers that could prohibit, smaller entities from receiving the funds that they need. So thank you.
Councilwoman Suara.
I have to chime in as a CPA, right? So I think I like the way the conversation is going, and I do want to say that even at the state level, for some of the licenses requirement, some of them will require an audit. But the state, in some cases, will take a review, which is a lesser audit. And I think that doing a full-scale audit after Enron is just cost-prohibitive for a lot of small non-for-profit. So I think if we ask for a review, I think that costs way less and does a lot. And so I want to make sure that, and I know that the state, for some licenses, for some professionals, will allow them to do a review instead of an audit. And so I want to add to that conversation and want to be a part of that discussion. Thank you.
All right. Councilwoman Sepulveda.
Thank you, Chair. Right before this meeting, I just came from a meeting with the New Americans Advisory Council, and I was mentioning to them about the nonprofits and how money was being distributed and how some of these nonprofits weren't able to get a proper audit, and so they didn't qualify for the funding. And so they had a question, and I thought I'd ask it now. I'm glad that you guys are going to review what is considered an audit for Metro. They were asking if it's too expensive for some of these smaller nonprofits, what is the possibility of having a specific fund to help some of these smaller organizations with being able to conduct a proper audit, and would that conflict with some state regulation?
I don't think that Metro, I think there would be a problem if Metro was paying for their audit. There may be some way that another nonprofit, I don't know if there are nonprofit CPA organizations, could receive a grant, but I think the better answer is, like Councilmember Suara talked about, the review versus the certified audit, and that is what John Bunton and I were discussing. I think the average audit cost for a small nonprofit is about $7,000. A review is maybe $2,500, which is a significant savings, and may even be less according to Councilmember Suara. So that is what we're looking at doing, and I know that discussions with the Center for Nonprofit Management are ongoing about that and how that could be done. So ultimately, it would be legislation that the council would have to approve to change the audit requirements, but that is coming.
Great, thank you.
Councilwoman Stiles, you have something quick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You wanted me to remind you.
That's right. Thank you.
So there are 2 items on my wish list that I had neglected to add, so I'm adding them now. Those are 3 FTEs for animal control. That's 1 for the shelter, and that's 2 for the officers that go out and do the assessments and collections.
And what's the second one? Or was
So the one is the shelter, and then the 2 other FTEs are for.
no, you said there were 2 items that got left off.
I meant 1 and 2.
Oh, got you. Okay. So
Thank you, Chair.
So we'll have to table that for Monday. So it's the 3 FTEs for animal control. There was also a handout that was passed out during the MMPD budget hearing from the mental health co-op that they have a budget deficit. And I have an email that deficit is $818,000. And then there was also some discussion about adding additional FTEs for fire and EMS. And again, we can continue that discussion on Monday. And I just wanted to clarify, just in case it wasn't clear, that finance isn't making funding decisions. They're just helping in the analysis and identifying potential areas for funding. And then obviously as the council, we decide hopefully we pass a substitute budget, but we decide what that looks like and where the actual funding sources come from. Yes, Councilwoman Stiles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Forgive me. I do have a second item. I wanted to mention, in terms of nonprofits, that there was an organization that I neglected to put on there, Moves and Grooves. It's a youth organization that provides after-school activities. They're working with STEM initiatives, robotics. They're working with the Civil Design Center right now on a project. And so I would like to add some funds to that organization under nonprofits as well.
We will
and on Monday, yes.
We will discuss it on Monday.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.